But actually, another kind of second order effect of that will be any kind of encryption that you have protecting your financial data, your personal data, that can very easily be broken now by a quantum computer.
So that has real geopolitical implications.
Oh, yes. That is something. See, it's funny you say that, because when we were talking about artificial intelligence and the geopolitical implications, I see the kind of global trade of ideas and open source models and scientific research on AI as just being a little bit more fluid. Whereas with quantum computing, there are huge security implications. And so for me, the geopolitical fallout from that is much more obvious and meaningful.
What about energy environmental considerations? We've heard about data centers soaking up huge amounts of energy, water. Do we have even the capacity to generate this amount of demand?
It's interesting. Whenever I talk to teenagers, I've been to a few schools and talked about AI to secondary school students. And whenever they ask me questions, the number one thing they always ask is about the impact on the environment. They're really worried about that. But I'm actually less worried about it than maybe I should be more worried. But having spoken to people in Silicon Valley who work for Google Cloud, who work for Amazon AWS, for these people, it is in their financial interest for these data centers to not be so power hungry, because it's really expensive for them. So they are working very, very hard to find more efficient ways to design algorithms, more efficient ways to use all that computing power, all the power from those chips. And I think when the incentives are set up like that, my hope is that they will find a way to do this more cheaply and more efficiently.
Thank you for listening to the interview. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can find many more episodes of the interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts, including ones with Google boss Sundar Pichai and Mustafa Suleyman, CEO of Microsoft AI. Until the next time, bye for now.
From the BBC, that was the interview. I'm Saroj.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, sitting in today for Marcy Marcusa, and what a difference just a few days makes. I was here on Monday in the host chair, and it was cold. There was snow in the forecast, but now it's already 1 in the city of Winnipeg, and we're warming up to 6 degrees today in the city, dipping down to -4 overnight. But then tomorrow, Saturday, the weekend, a lovely forecast ahead. 9 and sunny is the high tomorrow, 8 and some rain on Sunday. And even up in Thompson, not too bad either. -13 right now, but it's going to get warmer. You're hitting 0 today and then above 0 tomorrow. So right across the province, things are warming up, and it looks like spring is well on its way, if not actually here for real this time. Let's say hello to the crew. Joining us this morning, Abby Adeyemi is our studio technician and keeping an eye on your weather. Sierra Sanders is our studio director and keeping an eye on your commute. And Darren Morash is our YouTube producer and keeping an eye on, well, YouTube. Let's also say hello to Heather Wells, who's in with a look at your news headlines.
Good morning. Well, a local economist says when you crunch the numbers, a gas tax cut of 10 cents a litre won't mean much to many Manitobans. University of Winnipeg economics professor Phil Surin says that would only save a typical driver $200 over a year. He says rural people will likely benefit most because they drive greater distances. So how much of a cut would we need to see a difference? We'll hear about that coming up as well. Astronaut Jeremy Hansen has made history as the first Canadian to fly around the moon during this Artemis II mission. But the Royal Canadian Air Force colonel took some of his earliest flights right here in Manitoba. We'll hear about that in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
So cool. Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That's Heather Wells at the CBC News Desk. Lots to come in this next hour on Information Radio as the U.S. and Iran prepare for peace negotiations. We're going to check in with an expert in international law on how the proceedings might play out. Also, inside the ostrich cull on a BC farm that became the center of an international firestorm, the Fifth Estate's Harvey Kasher joins us coming up this next hour on Information Radio. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Stay tuned. We'll be back after World Report.
On cue. The Grammy-winning prodigy Jacob Collier is known for making big maximalist music. I mean, his last record was a 4-volume, 50-song album featuring over 24 musicians, but his latest record is just him and a guitar. He'll tell you why.
I see the whole world in your eyes.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Pakistan's capital is ready to host peace talks between American and Iranian delegations this weekend, but whether those talks go ahead at all remains unclear. There is still no confirmation. An Iranian delegation has even arrived in Islamabad, and that is largely because of what's going on in Lebanon. Israel is continuing its airstrikes there. Iran is insisting its 2-week ceasefire deal with the U.S. includes a halt to Israeli strikes in Lebanon, while the U.S. is saying Iran had promised to fully open the Strait of Hormuz, which so far hasn't happened. Megan Williams has more.
The Strait of Hormuz was supposed to reopen as part of the U.S.-Iran ceasefire deal. 3 days in, it's effectively still choked, with Iran warning ships attempting to pass without its explicit permission will be targeted and destroyed. Reports suggest Iran plans on charging a toll of up to $2 million per ship, which it says, going forward, it will share with Oman across the strait.
And obviously the Gulf states are looking with trepidation at that. They don't want Iran to become the Gulf hegemon that imposes its will over them, and they need to kind of fall in line for that.
Middle East Council of Global Affairs fellow Omar Rahman told Al Jazeera. Before the conflict, 20% of the world's oil and gas moved through the strait, carried by more than 100 ships a day. Yesterday, 7 tankers passed through. Now, some 230 loaded vessels are waiting to sail. Iran's position is that full security for shipping comes only after a U.S. military withdrawal. But Donald Trump posted overnight the U.S. military is, quote, loading up and resting, looking forward to its next conquest. A warning dressed as a victory lap. The White House says the strait must open without limitation, no conditions, no tolls. It's a position echoed by the head of Abu Dhabi's national oil company and the UN's Maritime Agency. It says 20,000 seafarers remain stranded on vessels in the Gulf, some for more than a month. Megan Williams, CBC News, Dubai.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, mourners weeping over the shrouded bodies of 2 people in Gaza City. Medics say an Israeli airstrike killed at least 2 people in Jabalia. A ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has been in place since October, but that hasn't stopped people from being killed. Health officials in Gaza say more than 700 Palestinians have been killed since the deal went into effect, and militants have killed at least 3 Israeli soldiers. The UK's defense secretary says he's convinced Donald Trump won't pull the U.S. out of NATO, despite the U.S. president's repeated threats.
America is absolutely locked into, with benefits as well as massive contributions to NATO. We have to do more. We are and we will on the European side. There are deep values that our nations share.
Reuters news agency is reporting Trump has talked to advisors about pulling some American troops out of Europe. He's been complaining repeatedly that NATO is a paper tiger, angry that the alliance hasn't joined the war on Iran. In this country, Liberal Party members are gathering in Montreal today, and at the convention there will be some new faces as Mark Carney ropes in more floor crossers. This week, MP Marilyn Gladu left the Conservatives to join the Liberals, but she's now trying to clarify her positions on some key social issues. Tom Perry reports.
I'm super excited to be here at my first Liberal convention.
Marilyn Gladue, sporting a bright red jacket, her new team color, went before reporters to perform a political balancing act.
This is actually the best thing for my riding, for the country, and for myself.
Trying to explain how after more than a decade as a Conservative MP, she decided this week to switch sides.
Well, what I heard starting even after the election was that people, they were upset that Pierre lost his riding, lost the election.
Insisting she acted on the wishes of her constituents by abandoning Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives and embracing Mark Carney and the Liberals. Insisting as well she's ready to support the government on key issues like abortion.
I have been consistent when I said that women need to have the right to choose. I obviously have my long faith traditions, but I'm ready to support the rights of women in this country.
As a Conservative, Gladue also argued MPs who switch parties should step down and run in a by-election. Her position now that's not legally required.
That law has not been changed, and so when it does, I would be happy to do that.
And so Gladue, once a proud Conservative, now calls herself a proud member of Canada's new government. Tom Perry, CBC News, Montreal.
Tens of thousands of people may soon be told to leave Canada. Immigration Canada says their applications for refugee status could be denied. It comes after Ottawa passed a new law that drastically cuts the number of asylum seekers being allowed into this country. Rafi Boudjikanian has the story.
Every single day, receiving 200, 300, 400, please help.
Lida Berengian says she does not expect those calls to stop anytime soon. The immigration lawyer says some of her clients have started receiving letters warning them they may be ineligible for refugee status. The Immigration Department says it expects to send some 30,000 letters out after Parliament passed legislation last month. The new rules largely limit applicants to refugee claims no later than a year after getting to Canada. In a letter seen by CBC News, applicants are told they have 3 weeks to send additional information before a determination is made. The IRCC says ineligibility does not mean someone is immediately removed. They can fill out forms about their risk of deportation, but no longer would have access to in-person hearings. For Berengian, that's a huge difference.
There is no member to listen to you.
In a second kind of letter seen by CBC, applicants who cross the Canada-US land border without going through a regular port of entry are told they must leave Canada immediately and may be able to apply for a form risk assessment at a later date.
It's misleading.
Adam Sadinsky is the vice president of the Canadian Association of Refugee Lawyers.
They do have the constitutional right to an assessment of their risk before they have to leave the country.
Sadinsky says he would not be surprised if the new legislation is challenged in court shortly. The government maintains it is trying to regain control of immigration to restore balance. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
To the moon and back. Astronauts on the Artemis 2 mission are coming back today. Splashdown expected to happen tonight around 8 o'clock Eastern. Then as their aircraft enters the Earth's atmosphere 30 times faster than the speed of sound, mission controllers will be holding their breaths. Anand Ram reports.
I'm going to tell you, it's 13 minutes of things that have to go right.
Jeff Radigan, lead flight director for Artemis 2, talking about the highly anticipated return to Earth.
Main chutes have to deploy, the reefing systems have to cut, we have to get touchdown angle alignment correct.
Starting around 7:30 p.m. Eastern tonight, the crew re-enters Earth's atmosphere, hoping for a smooth splashdown. Always risky, says York University Associate Professor John Moores.
There's a lot of speed that you've got to lose very quickly. Your aim has got to be true in order to get into the atmosphere.
This is the first time humans have returned from the moon in more than 50 years, but it's the second time for the Orion capsule.
Artemis 1 had a lot of unexpected charring, even dislodging of material from the heat shield that they weren't expecting.
Josh Dinner is a writer with Space.com. He says the Artemis 1 re-entry 3 years ago has led to changes.
Instead of altering the design of the heat shield, what they did instead was alter the trajectory of Orion's return for this mission.
Meanwhile, the astronauts are ready to come home, says NASA's Associate Administrator Amit Kshatriya.
They are some of the most thoughtful, incredible people that I've ever known, and that what they've shown to me is a great example of why we go and do these missions, right? If you can't take love to the stars, then what are we doing?
And as they carry the precious wealth of experience for future crews, keep in mind, they're bringing it back at more than 38,000 kilometers per hour. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
And finally, 50 years ago, today.
Woke up this morning with a wine glass in my hand. Whose wine? What wine? Where the hell did I die?
Peter Frampton went to number 1 on the U.S. album chart with Frampton Comes Alive, one of the biggest-selling live albums in rock history. It was the best-selling album of 1976, selling over 6 million copies in the U.S. alone. Frampton Comes Alive voted Album of the Year in the 1976 Rolling Stone Readers Poll, and it stayed on the chart for 97 weeks. And despite some health challenges, at the age of 75, Frampton isn't slowing down with an all-star collaboration due to be released next month.
They said, don't walk away.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Well, I think it's safe to say it's officially spring. I'm looking ahead at the forecast. I only see highs above 0, sunny days, rain, and not really any snow, at least here in southern Manitoba. So it looks like a sunny weekend, sunny, warm weekend ahead. We'll have the forecast for you shortly here. Coming up this hour on the show, humanoid robots are a fascination for Silicon Valley, but who's going to train them? Turns out the answer is, well, you, whether you know it or not. Our AI columnist Francis Sims is going to join us later this hour. Also, we're going to learn more about how the U.S. and Iran may approach peace negotiations taking place this weekend in Pakistan. Also, this half hour on the show, Steam, Roll, Repeat, might sound like a way to clean a suit jacket or something like that, but it's actually a way to check for testicular cancer. We're going to hear from an organization that's trying to raise awareness about screening for that type of cancer and why it can sometimes be hard to talk about. That's coming up this hour on Information Radio. But first, though, at 6:11, let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, starting this weekend, up to 100 skilled volunteers arrive in Peguis First Nation to help sandbag. The Interlake community may be facing its worst flood ever. The humanitarian aid group Team Rubicon has been called to help. It is a veteran-led group made up of trained first responders and civilians. The head of Canadian operations says they're aware they may only have 10 days before Peguis starts flooding. Manitoba is going to offer wildland firefighters N95 masks this summer, but their protection against wildfire smoke is limited. The gear captures most health-harming particles, but can't stop gases like carbon monoxide. The Union for Manitoba's Firefighters says it is open to exploring better gear as long as it doesn't get in the way of firefighting. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Abby Adeyemi, I think earlier this week I didn't really like you very much because all you brought was sad news, but I think you're back in my good books.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Okay, let's just say we're anticipating a mix of sun and clouds to start, your Friday. Southern regions will definitely see temperatures hovering around 0 this morning, while up north we're still seeing some light snow here and there. And the wind chill, you will feel it as you travel towards Churchill and Tudula Lake this morning. For the Red River Valley region, we're looking at a cloudy start, some breezy conditions. We do warm up to 6 degrees later today. Current temperatures, we're hovering around 1 degree in the city, and we're going to stay around -1 before we get to a high later, and then a sunny Friday ahead tomorrow with highs almost at 10 degrees. Across the southern regions, we're seeing temperatures between -4 and 1 from the Westman to the Interlake region. Plenty of sunshine in the forecast. Also getting close to 8 degrees in some areas today. While up north, we're looking at -13 around Thompson and then -26 as you get towards Churchill. Tudula Lake close to -30 this morning and the wind chill around -37. So the province kind of waking up to some clear conditions in the south, but those chilly conditions still holding things down up north. Winnipeg, we are at 1 right now. Kind of cloudy conditions, but we're expecting some sunshine as we get into the morning, and we warm up to 6 degrees today. We climb to 9 tomorrow.
So exciting. Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
That's Abby Adiemi. And Sierra Sanders, our studio director, is in with a look at your commute. Hello.
Good morning, Corey. Well, the people are still waking up, and I feel like I'm still waking up sometimes as well. So not too much going on out there on the commute right now. Things are looking pretty smooth. So commuter line so far pretty quiet. But if that's not the case and there is something that is getting in your way, I'd love to know about it, whether you are here in the city or anywhere else in the province. The number to call today is 204-788-3093.
Well, it's Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, and for many, the diagnosis and talking about how to find it can be uncomfortable to talk about. And that's why one organization launched the Know Thy Nuts campaign. Atika Mohammed is the implementation director for cancer care programs at Movember Canada, and she joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So, but before we talk about, how to look for it, how to find it, I just want to, I think a lot of people assume testicular cancer in general, often, people assume it's something, you're more likely to get, or it's not really a problem until maybe you're middle-aged, a little bit older, but it's not necessarily the case. So for folks, younger folks, say under 40, how common is testicular cancer, in young men?
So we know testicular cancer is relatively rare overall, but it is the most common cancer in young men between the ages of 15 and 40. So they may not, we know that 75% of men don't even realize that this is the most common cancer in their age group. So while many people don't think about it, it's very relevant for that age group. And the good news is it's highly curable when caught early.
So then let's talk a little bit about how to catch that early. So what do you do?
Yeah, so Movember has a guide called Know Thy Nuts, which you can find on our website, movember.com. And it helps men get familiar with what is normal for their body so they can take notice if something changes and know when to speak to a doctor. It's really meant to be simple and practical, and it's about making something that can feel awkward a bit more approachable.
Yes, we have if you're watching on YouTube right now, we have a diagram up.
Yeah.
It is of a pear, which like the fruit, but also it kind of looks like a pair of testicles.
And it shows exactly how to check the 3-step process that you see in front of you.
Yeah. Do you want to go through that for listeners here? So steam, roll, repeat. Do you want to describe that for folks?
Yeah, absolutely. So steam, roll, repeat. So steam is take a hot shower, feel comfortable, be in a comfortable environment, get loosened up. And then what you do is you check each side with your fingers, just getting familiar with one side. And then you repeat the same step on the other side. And the key is, and this is actually very important, you're not trying to diagnose anything. You're just trying to take notice if something changes.
So it's like a daily thing, so that you're kind of aware of, how it all works down there. And then if something is different, you're like, oh, okay, maybe I should get that checked out.
Absolutely. It can be daily for sure.
Okay. It's so funny because even like as I consider myself a professional at having conversations, we're talking about this and I'm talking about it with you, like a man to a woman even. I get like a little bit squirrely. Why do you think it is that there is this sort of awkwardness in talking about it, or even think about like, I don't think I would ever seek out this information and be like, how do I know? Because it still feels just so strange. And especially, as a woman talking to men about this, what have you noticed about the culture around talking about checking for testicular cancer?
Yeah, so I would say that a lot of it comes down to comfort and familiarity, right? So this isn't something that most parents talk to their teenage sons about, or even young men in their 20s or 30s are talking to their friends about. They're focused on things like school and grades and work and friends or sports, and not conversations about cancer or what's normal for your bodies. But we do know from our work that it's really important to have these conversations early. And there's also a gap between awareness and confidence, right? So there's stigma involved, but it goes beyond that. So some men may notice something isn't right, and they may delay or dismiss it and say, oh, I'll just deal with it later. And we know that 1 in 4 men don't actually seek care unless they feel like it's something really serious. And a lot of it does come down to the system as well, right? The healthcare system. It doesn't always make it easy for men to step in and take and be advocates for their own healthcare. So it's both a personal and structural issue. I do want to comment on the issue about being a woman. We know that when women advocate for the men in their lives, women and partners, or speak up for them or encourage them to get care, they're more likely to do it. So
Okay, that's great. And for folks who also, so we talked about doing the check, the steamroll repeat, but is there any other early warning signs of testicular cancer that men should also be looking out for?
yeah, so there aren't always symptoms. So this can affect men that feel really healthy. And that's why it is important to get familiar with what's normal for your body. But the main things to look out for are lump, swelling, pain, or just even a change in how it feels. So it may not be the same for everyone, but it's really about noticing what's different from your normal. And it doesn't always have to be painful.
And I imagine if you do notice a difference, what's the advice and where should you go? What should you do?
Yeah, so if something feels different or unusual, it's always worth getting checked. Again, you're not trying to self-diagnose yourself, right? You're just trying to check if something feels different from your normal. So again, it's worth getting checked. You don't need to wait for pain. Acting early actually leads to the best outcomes.
Well, Atika, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Atika Mohammed is the Implementation Director for Cancer Care Programs at Movember Canada.
In the fall of 2023, Romana Didalo, a woman calling herself the Queen of Canada, drove into Richmond, Saskatchewan with a fleet of RVs and set up her kingdom in an abandoned school. So the town banded together to get the cult out by any means necessary. My name is Rachel Brown, and in this season of Uncover, I explore what happens when a conspiracy theory lands in your backyard. The Cult Queen of Canada. Available now on CBC Listen and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Jacqueline Ferland Smith, a 40-year-old former Canadian military trainer, moves to Costa Rica to follow her dreams, but in the summer of 2021, vanishes without a trace.
How can a woman just go missing and us put out all that effort to find her and she's still missing?
I'm David Ridgen, and this is Someone Knows Something, Season 10, the Jacqueline Ferland Smith case. Available now on CBC Listen and wherever you get your podcasts.
6:21 right now. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. Still to come here on the show, this next hour, we're actually going to hear from a Winnipeg economist who says a potential gas tax might not make a difference for Manitoba's wallets. That comes after yesterday's interview. Marcy Marcusa had Premier Wab Kinew on the show, and he said that his government is considering looking into it, watching what's happening, of course, in the Strait of Hormuz, and what impact that could have on gas prices, and they're considering lowering the gas tax like it did in 2024. So we're going to have that conversation coming up after 7 o'clock, but next here on Information Radio. There is still lots to come. We are going to be having a conversation about the ostrich cull on a BC farm that became the center of an international firestorm. And the Fifth Estate, Harvey Kasher, is going to be joining us shortly here. Also, speaking of the Strait of Hormuz, we are going to be having a conversation as the U.S. and Iran prepare for peace negotiations. We're going to check in with an expert in international law on how the proceedings might play out. That's coming up here on Information Radio. As for your weather conditions right now, we're looking at heading for a high today of 6 degrees here in Winnipeg, dipping down to -4 overnight, and then looking for a high of 9. Well, as mentioned, next up here on Information Radio.
They're massacring my beautiful babies, healthy babies! Please, they're healthy! Please, they're healthy! We are meant to protect them! They're killing my babies slowly! Stop!
Well, it was the most controversial animal cull in Canadian history. More than 300 ostriches euthanized last November after an outbreak of avian influenza on a farm in the BC interior. The farm's owners went to court to stop the cull, saying their ostriches had rare genetics and could produce powerful antibodies and needed to be saved and studied. But an investigation by the Fifth Estate reveals the campaign to save the ostriches was built on a foundation of exaggerated and false claims about their birds, business, and scientific research. Fifth Estate producer Harvey Kasher joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning.
So the campaign to save the ostriches in BC last year was an ongoing news story that eventually went around the world. Just remind our listeners, though, how it all started.
Yeah, if you recall, especially last summer, there were headlines throughout Canada and the world. And about 400 ostriches on a farm in tiny Edgewood, BC. Late in 2024, they started dropping dead. 69 in all died over the course of 5 weeks. Now, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, which monitors farm animal outbreaks, tested 2 carcasses and determined that the ostriches had contracted a highly pathogenic H5N1 avian flu. And because the entire flock was exposed, it would have to be culled. And culls are ordered to prevent the spread to other poultry farms and possibly even to humans. And the farm owners, however, argued that their surviving birds had developed herd immunity and were perfectly healthy. They went to court to stop the cull, and the fight was on, a fight that would last nearly a year.
So the Fifth Estate took a look at some of the farm owners' scientific claims. So what did you uncover?
Well, quite a bit. The farm owners claimed that a Quebec lab had tested their ostrich antibodies and was impressed by their potential. So we reached out to that lab. And in an email to the Fifth Estate, Immune Biosolutions said the antibodies did not demonstrate the quality, purity, or specificity required for therapeutic development. Now, during the COVID pandemic, the farm owners themselves started their own antibody research company called Struthio Bioscience, literally ostrich in Latin. They claimed a Harvard medical professor was on their scientific advisory board. And he sent us an email which co-host Mark Kelly of the Fifth Estate, who did the documentary, shared with farm co-owner Dave Belinsky.
And we did contact the Harvard professor who was listed on your scientific board of advisors.
Which one? Fasano?
Yes.
Yeah.
He said he's never heard of Struthio. And when we said that he was listed in this Struthio prospectus, he found that to be disturbing, the fact that he was listed there, because he was not a scientific advisor.
He was on the list to be.
Now, the farm owners claimed that their ostriches were irreplaceable because they'd undergone testing that showed that they had unique, robust antibodies and developed herd immunity from the bird flu. So we contacted another business partner, this one in Japan, who has spent decades researching ostrich antibodies, and we asked him if these BC ostriches were scientifically unique. His answer, no. An ostrich, he told us, is an ostrich.
So it wasn't just the farm owners who believed the ostriches should be saved. They convinced many others these ostriches were rare scientific specimens, right?
That's right. Over the course of the legal challenges to stop the cull, a few thousand people flocked to visit the ostrich farm. Some camped out, stayed there for months even, to show their support. But I went more than that. You might recall that even U.S. Secretary of Health Robert F. Kennedy Jr. weighed in. He wrote a letter to Prime Minister Mark Carney urging Canada to stop the cull so the farm owners could continue their so-called scientific research. Now, throughout this campaign, the farm owners were fundraising. The Fifth Estate looked at their GoFundMe, crowdsourcing, fundraising sites. The farm owners have raised more than $330,000 and counting, in part by claiming these birds were special and should be saved. So if their
scientific claims were dubious, how was their fight to save the birds able to last almost a year then?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is the farm took their legal fight all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. And so what a lot of people have said was this, delay to an urgent call meant that for 10 months there wasn't the urgent call that was needed to prevent the spread of this flu. But there's a longer answer to that question, which is, we're living in a period of time where some people don't believe in science or scientists, and where some people think public health mandates are always an example of government overreach, where evidence is dismissed and conspiracy theories are more embraced. And so we sat down with an expert in avian flu, virologist Angela Rasmussen from the University of Saskatchewan, and we asked her what she thought of the farm owners' scientific claims as outlined in their Struthio business plan.
So, Mark, this is the point where I really went past the event horizon of the ostrich black hole. So I started doing a little looking, and I found the Struthio Biosciences business plan, which was the best description of the scientific work that they were undertaking. And I think calling it scientific work is quite generous.
What would you call it? You read their business prospectus?
I call it a scam.
So, if this 10-month-long standoff was really based on a scam, it was a costly one. A typical poultry farm call would cost the government about $250,000. But because this one was prolonged with those legal challenges along the way, it cost Canadian taxpayers almost $7 million. And that, we're told, is the costliest cull in Canadian history.
Well, thanks for looking into this, Harvey. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Harvey Kasher is a producer with the Fifth Estate. He was in Toronto. The Ostrich Con airs on the Fifth Estate tonight at 9 p.m. on CBC Television and CBC Gem, or you can watch on CBC's YouTube page. Time now for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, we're actually the warmest spot in the entire province. 1 degree right now in downtown Winnipeg. It's going to warm up to 6 this afternoon with a mix of sun and clouds. Well, this could be a season that sees floods, perhaps wildfires. N95 masks are going to be made available to wildland firefighters in Manitoba this summer. But the gear won't help reduce exposure to toxic gases and heavy smoke like carbon monoxide. Other jurisdictions like BC have been using specialized masks with respirators to block those chemicals. Natasha Broznitsky, a senior officer with that department, says the equipment's effective, but other steps like crew rotation, working upwind, and setting up camps on clean air are what's needed.
It's not about finding one silver bullet to reduce exposure. It's about doing sort of as many things as possible where they make sense and reducing that burden of exposure over the course of a worker's lifetime at work.
Manitoba says crews are also trained to deal with heavy smoke in the field. The Wildfire Service has also raised concerns wearing masks can cause heat exhaustion and difficulty breathing. Well, from fires to floods, Peguis First Nation is getting help with flood prep from a humanitarian group, Team Rubicon. It's a veteran-led group which includes trained first responders and civilians. Starting this weekend, up to 100 skilled volunteers will arrive in Peguis to sandbag. Tim Kenny heads up the Canadian operations. He says they're aware they may only have 10 days before Peguis starts flooding.
That's why we are mobilizing such a large team. And our goal, based on initial information out of the community, is to assist with the approximate 60 buildings, 60 pieces of infrastructure that will need protecting.
3 members of Team Rubicon will be in Peguis assessing the needs today. The Interlake community could be facing its worst flooding ever. A local economist says when you crunch the numbers, a gas tax cut of 10 cents a litre wouldn't mean much to many Manitobans. University of Winnipeg economics professor Phil Serin says that would only save a typical driver $200 over a year. He says rural people will likely benefit the most.
They're actually giving it to people who actually are going to benefit. So it's really a transfer of spending from the public sector to the private sector. So the private sector individuals will now be able to spend. So it's not as if it's disappearing. So it's going to make public spending more challenging.
Serin says the province doesn't have much wiggle room for public spending. He says given the price of gas, any tax cut would have to be 20 to 25 cents a litre to really help people. The PCMLA for Portage-la Prairie is concerned about a delay in opening the city's new hospital. Construction on that facility is finished, but administrators have asked for more time to get it up and running. Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera says they're listening to the leaders, adding it is important to get it right.
And we're also doing the work simultaneously of ensuring that there's more training, we're retaining healthcare workers, and we're recruiting more healthcare workers to the region and specifically to this site so that when they do start welcoming patients, they can do that successfully.
Jeff Bariza worries staff hired to work at the health center might quit instead of waiting to start work next year. An education expert is calling for annual reviews of Manitoba School Division staff rosters. The education minister ordered all school divisions conduct a one-time review of their staff after a teacher in Steinbach was charged with child exploitation last year. That teacher worked at the school without proper certification. The deadline for the review was March 27th. Cameron Hausman is the U of Manitoba's Educational Administration Department, says it's important for the province and divisions to be transparent.
It would be beneficial if the government were to make this an annual practice, because this directive should be enough to ensure that divisions are engaging in recruitment and hiring practices consistent with the Public Schools Act when it comes at least to the certified teachers in the province.
The province says a small number of school divisions were given extensions to submit. Astronaut Jeremy Hansen has made history as the first Canadian to fly around the moon during the Artemis II lunar mission. But the Royal Canadian Air Force colonel took some of his earliest flights right here in Manitoba. Hansen got his basic flying training at Southport, just south of Portage-la Prairie. Harrison Roos runs the communications department at Sky Align, the company that's taken over training at Southport. Roos says Hansen's career trajectory will inspire future Air Force trainees to reach for the stars.
Watching somebody like Colonel Hansen go on his journey has to inspire future generations of aviators in the Air Force to think about what's possible, whether it's the moon, Mars, who knows what's in the future now.
The Artemis II crew is expected to land back on Earth later today. You can hear more about Artemis II coming up on World Report at 7. Well, pulling out all the stops.
Goes for the net, looking for the tip, and they score!
Josh Morrissey on TSN as the Winnipeg Jets edge the St. Louis Blues 3-2. Not only was Morrissey pulling out the stops, he was making the stops, stopping the puck, helping goalie Connor Hellebuck in the first period. Morrissey says it's desperation hockey. But what does the coach, Scott Arniel, say?
Yeah, that was a breakdown, and obviously, great job by him getting to the net and staying with it. Obviously not letting it, just not giving up on the play.
In fact, Morrissey was named the game's first star, that in a rink that is not the home rink. Now just 4 games left in the regular season. The Jets head home now, hosting the Flyers tomorrow night. You can find more Manitoba news throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
More of that desperation hockey, please.
Yes, I know. It was great.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That's Heather Wells at the CBC News Desk. Abby Adeyemi, what's going on with the weather?
Well, we have localized frostbite as you travel towards Churchill this morning. It feels close to minus 39, 38 in that part of the province, while down south we'll see the regions warm up close to +8. Forecast for Winnipeg and the Red River Valley region at this time, starting with some cloudy conditions. Morning temperatures going to be hovering around 0 and -1 before we get to a high of 6 degrees today. Current temperature at the Forks 1. Down south, we're going to see temperatures between -4 and -1, and most of the regions will struggle to get to 8 degrees today. While up north, Thompson, Linley, Gillam, we're seeing temperatures between -12, -19, and Churchill frigid at -26 at this time with a wind chill close to -36.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
That is Abby Adeyemi. Keeping an eye on your weather. Sierra Sanders, what's going on with the commute?
Not too much, Corey. The commuter line has been pretty quiet so far this morning, but usually I find myself eating my words when I say that, because then in the next hour I'll get a million calls, which is great because then I can let people know what's going on.
And now potholes going to show up and start eating cars.
It's something like that. I feel like things like that happen to me. So, but either way, the number to call if something is getting in your way, whether you are here in the city or out on the highways, is 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Sierra. Well, Christy Ramlakan is here with the business report. Good morning. Oh, I think we've got... hi there, Christy.
Hey, good morning.
So we're close to finding out how the Canadian job market fared last month. What details do you have for us so far?
Yes, so Statistics Canada is set to release fresh labor market data this morning with its labor force survey. A Reuters poll of economists expects Canada to have added 15,000 jobs in March after shedding more than 100,000 positions over the first 2 months of the year. So those at RBC say a weak pace of hiring could extend into the second quarter of the year as tensions over the war in the Middle East compound with ongoing trade uncertainty.
So now staying on the effects of the war here, people planning their summer trips are about to get some sticker shock.
Yes, that's right. So travelers are facing higher costs and fewer flight options. The culprit is volatile oil and jet fuel prices that have been swinging since the war in the Middle East started. So WestJet, Air Canada, and Porter Airlines have all introduced fuel surcharges to certain flight bookings in recent weeks. And experts say budget carriers and the customers who rely on them will feel the pinch first. But even business and front cabin passengers won't escape these higher costs. And relief may not come quickly, even if oil prices start to drop, because, well, airlines can take months to adjust fares while they wait for energy markets to stabilize. Now, travel agency experts say travelers are trying to work around these higher prices, with some booking much earlier than normal, while others are taking their chances and waiting in hopes that prices will come down. But, some experts say flights that don't go through the Middle East are still pretty stable with fewer disruptions, and higher travel costs are also playing out alongside the ongoing boycott of travel to the U.S., further convincing many Canadians to vacation close to home.
So switching gears here, we just saw the largest drop for average asking rents in nearly 5 years. So can you break down the details for us?
Yes, so average national asking rents fell to just over $2,000 last month. The analysis from rentals.ca and Urban Nation says prices were down more than 5% compared to a year ago, and it marked the 18th month in a row of declines. So rents fell at their fastest pace since the COVID-19 pandemic, and the report says this shows the impact of a declining population, coupled with ongoing affordability issues, heightened economic uncertainty, and record high apartment completions. And those factors have led to higher vacancy rates, tipping the scales back in renters' favor following a post-pandemic surge in rental costs. And some landlords are now even dangling incentives to lure potential tenants, such as free rent for a couple of months or waived parking fees. And a recent RBC economics report estimates the national rental vacancy rate could surpass 3% this year. And that would mark the third year in a row of rising vacancy rates across Canada. But you know what? Of course, the situation is different across the country, and certainly different when you break it down by province. So it's different there in Manitoba. Average asking rents for apartments there rose more than 3% to more than $1,600. So lower than, the national average, but going up still there.
Interesting. And finally here, the National Football League's streaming model is being investigated. Why is that?
Well, this is because the U.S. Justice Department is investigating whether the NFL is forcing viewers to pay too much in subscription fees. So complaints about the NFL's allegedly anti-competitive tactics were raised by a senator last month. He says football fans had to spend almost $1,000 on cable and streaming subscriptions to watch games this past season, and that fans had to subscribe to multiple streaming services. So distributors have largely vied for pieces of sports media by carving up rights among streaming platforms, and NFL games can be found across 10 streaming platforms in the U.S. And a DOJ probe that possibly upends how the NFL and streamers do business could bleed into other sports. Now, here in Canada, it appears the situation is a little bit better, though. DAZN is the home to NFL Game Pass, which provides full access to all NFL games for just one fee. And then CTV is the free-to-air home for Sunday afternoon games and the regular season. And TSN has all of the primetime games, plus the playoffs and, of course, the Super Bowl.
Well, thank you very much, Crystal Lee.
Okay, thanks, Corey.
That's Crystalie Ramlakan with your business news. 6:43 right now. Happy Friday. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Corey Funk in for Marcy Marcusa. Well, next up here on the show, after 6 weeks of war, a shaky ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran continues, but Israel and Hezbollah forces in Lebanon continue to exchange strikes against that backdrop. Peace negotiations are set to begin this weekend in Pakistan. The region and the world are watching these developments. And to learn more, we've reached Michael Link. He's a professor emeritus of law at Western University. He's worked extensively in the areas of human rights and international law. And we reached him in London, Ontario this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Corey. Thank you for having me.
So just give us the lay of the land here. Where do things, stand right now between all the parties involved?
Sure. I mean, the main parties would be Iran and the United States. As you said, they're about to open up negotiations under the mediation of Pakistan in Islamabad in the next day or so. And the major issues that are on the table, there are many, but perhaps the ones are worth noting for us has to do with, number one, the opening and the regulation of the Strait of Hormuz. As we know, 20% of the world's oil and natural gas supply passes through the Strait of Hormuz, which connects the Persian Gulf and its many oil-producing states with the Indian Ocean. Donald Trump wants to see that open and remain open. That became his Achilles heel during this war when Iran was effectively able to close the Strait of Hormuz, causing oil prices worldwide to rocket upward and really diminish the United States' bargaining power and Donald Trump's own domestic support. This was not going to be the sweet, swift, happy ending to the short war that Donald Trump had wound up planning. Other issues have to do with what's the future of Iran's nuclear power program, what's the future of the ability of Iran to manufacture missiles and drones, which are used so effectively during the course of this war, and also what's the future of Lebanon, particularly the disarming of the major Shiite militia, Hezbollah, and will that be accomplished either in Islamabad or in separate negotiations between Lebanon and Israel?
So let's kind of set the stage a little bit more than for those negotiations in general right now. Who are all the parties that are participating here?
Well, in Islamabad, it would be major and senior political and military leaders coming from Iran. The United States is being led by Vice President J.D. Vance in the negotiations. There's a lot of bridge building to have to do here. I mean, I think from the Iranian side, there's great distrust in the word of the United States. There had been seemingly, productive negotiations during January and February that were getting close to reaching an agreement with respect to the nuclear power program for Iran and for other issues of concern for the United States. And when those negotiations appeared to be close to be wrapped up and an agreement signed, the United States pulled out and launched this war. So Iran has, I suppose, many reasons for distrusting the United States with respect to that. Putting that aside, one interesting issue becomes, the American wish to have the Strait of Hormuz open to shipping without obstruction coming from Iran. And Iran's demand for having reparations coming from Israel and the United States to pay for the extensive damage done to its infrastructure and to its economy. Could that be solved by creative negotiations where Iran would be allowed to extract tolls of boats going in and out of the Strait of Hormuz, and that money would then be used to rehabilitate its economy? That may be something that Trump, the deal maker, is open to. That would mean that the United States is not directly itself paying reparations, but is allowing Iran another stream, a financial stream, to address its economic difficulties.
So then, essentially, do you think that is going to be, where these negotiations center around in terms of, how to operate the Strait of Hormuz, or is there other places where they could maybe find some common ground to end this war entirely?
Well, that's going to have to be addressed and resolved, both from the Iranian point of view and the American point of view. I mean, these other issues with respect to the future of the Iran's nuclear program has been the issue of the topic of negotiations going back 15 years to the Obama regime, where they had reached an agreement with strict international supervision of Iran's use of enriched uranium, which seemed to have put to an end any ambitions that Iran had for manufacturing nuclear bombs or nuclear weapons. And that had been discarded and withdrawn unilaterally by the United States. Can they find a way back in to a new agreement that actually deals with the future of the nuclear program for Iran, that satisfies the United States, but also satisfies the national pride of Iran for ensuring that it has some rights, that it sees other countries having the same rights to be able to develop nuclear weapons.
And meanwhile here, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Thursday that he's given instruction for Israel to begin peace talks with Lebanon. How will that play into these proceedings?
Well, very much so. I mean, the Iran indicated it was not interested in going forward with negotiations in Islamabad and Pakistan unless and until Israel's war on Lebanon came to a complete halt. The United States and Israel both said, oh, well, but that wasn't part of the ceasefire agreement. Iran insisted that it was. We're hearing a number of major European countries weighing in, saying the war has to end and a ceasefire has to be achieved in Lebanon, and then let the parties wind up negotiating. Europe is looking at Lebanon and realizing how destructive this war has been over the last 40 days on this very fragile economy in Lebanon, and it's likely going to be European money that's going to have to be used in order to try to help the rehabilitation of Lebanon.
Well, lots to look out for. Thanks for your time this morning. Really appreciate it, Michael.
Thank you very much for having me.
Michael Link is a professor emeritus of law at Western University.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. It's news you can trust, delivered when you want and where you want on Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1, local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
6:50 right now, and here's a strange question for you. What do people playing Pokemon Go on the streets of Winnipeg have in common with gig workers filming themselves washing dishes in Nigeria? They're all generating data to train robots, whether they know it or not. And Francis Sims covers tech issues for us, and he's here to talk about the race to develop robots and the role you may be playing in it. Good morning.
Good morning.
So first off, let's just kind of dig into this. How are Pokemon Go players helping train robots?
Yeah, well, firstly, Pokemon Go is almost 10 years old. This July, I think, is the 10th year anniversary. And little did we know when we snapped those photos of Pikachu on the park bench 10 years ago that data might be in a server in Silicon Valley training robots. But that's what's happened, and the story sort of goes like this. Every time you snapped a picture of your favorite Pokemon character in a park or, at a landmark, a museum, what you were doing is you were adding some very fine location detail to that image as well. Fast forward to now, they have over 80 billion images that were created from Pokemon Go from hundreds of millions of people all around the world. And they've decided that it's a great thing to use to train robots in the same way that we used data from the internet to train things like ChatGPT, because these robots, and they partnered with one company in the United States called Coco Robotics, who builds delivery robots. So think your pizza, your food, your Thai food, whatever it is. And the challenge with those delivery robots is that Google Maps is good for identifying roughly where the location is, but it doesn't know where the door is or that park bench to avoid. And this fine location detail, when it's plugged into these robots, can help these robots navigate to within centimeters of where they need to go, like areas where GPS just does not work. And that's what we're starting to see is all these videos and images that we've all created over various platforms like Pokemon Go are now starting to be used to train robots that potentially will replace us in the future.
And you mentioned one company like Coco. There's many companies actually gathering this kind of data to train AI models. Any other examples?
Yeah, like now there's a whole new economy emerging, this whole new gig economy where you can make a little bit of money on the side by doing things like strapping a camera to your forehead and taking video of yourself washing dishes. People can Google this. In fact, one company, DoorDash, Tasks, they've created an app. DoorDash is a delivery company where there's been some reports that they've hired thousands of people around the world to do something as simple as washing dishes. And every time you wash a plate, you hold it up, it takes a picture of it to see if it's clean or not, and then to go to the next one. And the reason they want to do that is you imagine in a year or two, there will be a robot dishwasher in a restaurant or maybe at home. And that the lighting may be different house to house. The sink size is different configuration in kitchens. Maybe you like to clean your dishes differently. And all that material is training data. So that's one example. You can get paid between $5 and $15, $20 an hour to do that. If you're a doctor at the other end of the spectrum, you might be offered $1,000 an hour to give it advice on how to do surgery, right? So all the things that we do, no longer is it just information like our social insurance number, our mother's maiden name, but now it's all about the way we live our lives that they want to capture on video and images to train those robots of the future.
And this is all to help robots, as you kind of mentioned, that could even potentially live in our homes and maybe wash our dishes for us in the future. So something that was a big hit at this year's Consumer Electronics Show. Is this something just a Silicon Valley pipe dream, or is this actually, going to happen?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. Neo is a robot that if people search for it on the internet, they'll see some amazing videos. You can pre-order it if you're in the United States to be delivered by the end of this year for $20,000 or $4.99 a month. It looks just like the sci-fi movies that we all remember. Elon Musk is converting one of his factories in Silicon Valley, probably more now, Fremont, California, from building Teslas to building his humanoid robot called Optimus, like think Transformers. It's fun how we use these references to the things from our childhood. There'll be a Jetsons one soon, I'm sure. But the bottom line is that they're promising that these robots will be in the home by the end of the year. It may be the end of the year, early next year, but they're coming, and they're already in factories around the country. Just recently, there was a story in Ontario about Toyota using 5 humanoid robots in their manufacturing plant to help deal with repetitive, highly stressful tasks that tend to injure people. So they're already in manufacturing. They will be coming to the homes. Maybe by the end of this year is what the promise is.
So I mean, obviously you have this robot living in your house. What are the privacy implications of having a robot, run by big tech companies in your house?
It's pretty severe in ways that we just don't think about. Like a couple of months ago, there was a story about how a person came upon the cameras of robot vacuums all around the world, like 8,000. And he was able to see inside people's homes. But he was also able to see the floor plans of people's homes, which is a weird thing that you might think, well, does that really matter? Well, it may matter if somebody's trying to rob your house. We don't even fully understand how it matters. But an example that's more relevant to us maybe is, like, what happens if I have a shoulder injury? Like maybe I get frozen shoulder. At the same time, I've changed my job and I'm applying for new medical, updating my medical information for that new job because the company gives insurance. Well, what happens 2 years down the road when I have a serious medical issue? I'm in the hospital and that insurance company asks for all that video that was recorded by my robot. Is that allowed? Because maybe they're going to use that video to help approve or deny my claim. I don't want that happening. Did I ever agree to that happening? Well, I never agreed to Pokemon Go being used to train robots in Silicon Valley. Those are the types of things we need to start thinking about because no longer is it that basic information that's being collected, but it's about the way we live our lives. And big tech, maybe shouldn't even be allowed to have that data.
And finally here, what else should regulators be thinking about to get ahead of this technology
Yeah. So in Canada, the story is complicated because the laws, we're always concerned about online surveillance and all these things. It's coming, though, and I think the first step is for regulators and government officials to lock our data in Canada. Don't let it leave the border. So, for example, in the Pokemon Go story again, if we were able to say you're not allowed to send it across the border, then we have control over it. And when the laws catch up, well, then we can decide, yes, we're allowed to use it to train AI and robots, or no, we're not. But when the data goes across the border to another country, we lose complete control. That's step one. Way before the laws catch up, just keep our data at home.
Okay, well, Francis, thanks so much. We'll talk more about how to prevent the robot invasion next time. We're running out of time now.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. That's technology columnist Francis Sims. He's Associate Dean of the Faculty of Applied Sciences and Technology at Humber Polytechnic. Still to come here on Information Radio, we're going to hear from a Winnipeg economist who says the potential gas tax might not make a difference for Manitobans' wallets. Also, CBC's Now or Never has been around for 10 years now. We're going to talk to the hosts and tell you how you can win a pair of tickets to their birthday party bash at the Gas Station Arts Center later this month. That's coming up this next hour on Information Radio. But right now, let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, the opening of the new hospital in Portage la Prairie has been delayed. The health center was slated to start accepting patients this fall, but administrators wanted more time to prepare. We're going to hear from the health minister coming up. And Manitoba is going to be offering wildland firefighters N95 masks this summer, but their protection against wildfire smoke is limited. We'll hear some reaction in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather. Well, still to come, we do want to heir from you if you see anything going on in the traffic situation out there. Been quiet so far, but you can give Sierra a call if you do see something. 204-788-3093. I'm Corey Funk, sitting in for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. We'll be back after World Report.
On The Current.
Ottawa and Alberta say they're taking another step forward in speeding up major projects.
We're in Alberta speaking with the province's Premier, Danielle Smith, about everything from separatism to pipelines to relations with Ottawa. They seem friendlier than in past. Danielle Smith and more coming up on The Current from Calgary.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. There is still considerable uncertainty whether scheduled peace talks between Iran and the U.S. in Pakistan will go ahead this weekend. The Strait of Hormuz still largely closed. Reopening the shipping route was a major condition for the U.S. to halt its strikes on Iran, and Iran says they will not talk until Israel halts its strikes on Lebanon. Crystal Gamansing has more from London.
Chanting about faith as a coffin is placed on top of a waiting vehicle. People in Beirut are heeding instructions to identify and collect their loved ones' remains from hospitals. They are gone. My whole family is gone, says Abdelrahman Mohammed. He lost 5 family members Wednesday. With the death toll from that sweeping series of lethal strikes now over 300, a diplomatic step forward. Following repeated appeals from the Lebanese government to enter into peace negotiations with us, I instructed the cabinet to open up direct negotiations, said Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last night. He wants Hezbollah disarmed, something that was previously agreed in the 2024 ceasefire, but has not been achieved. The Lebanese government and army no match for the militia trained and equipped by Iran for decades. There will be talks, but no ceasefire, said Netanyahu. U.S. President Donald Trump told NBC News he spoke with Netanyahu Thursday and that he is going to, quote, low-key it in Lebanon. A move needed if peace talks between the U.S. and Iran slated for Saturday in Pakistan are to have a chance at proceeding. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
Taiwan's opposition leader, Chen Li-wen, is in China meeting with the Chinese leader, Xi Jinping. Chen is in the highest-ranking Taiwanese official to visit China in the last 10 years. In their public remarks, both leaders expressed an interest in maintaining peace. Chen called for the development of the Strait of Taiwan to promote, quote, family ties and the civilization. Xi stressed that China will not tolerate Taiwan's independence. It was the most controversial and expensive animal cull in Canadian history. More than 300 ostriches were euthanized at a BC farm after an outbreak of avian influenza. The owners insisted the ostrich needed to be saved and studied for their antibodies. But an investigation by CBC's Fifth Estate reveals their campaign was built on exaggerated and false claims about their birds, business, and scientific research. Mark Kelly reports.
Please, they're healthy! Please, they're healthy!
314 ostriches were euthanized on a BC farm last November, a cull that was delayed for 10 months as the farm owners filed legal challenges. The farm argued online and in court their ostriches were scientifically valuable because they'd developed herd immunity. Katie Pizitny said a Quebec lab had tested their ostrich antibodies, and the then president of the company was impressed by their potential.
Because even at one point he said, if all of your ostrich eggs are like these eggs, he said this is a game changer.
In an email to the Fifth Estate, that lab, Immune Biosolutions, said the farm's ostrich antibodies weren't usable for therapeutic development. The farm owners also claimed a Harvard University Medical School professor was on the scientific advisory board of their ostrich antibody research company, Struthio Bioscience. When we contacted Dr. Alessio Fasano, he said he'd never heard of it. The company's pitch to investors claimed Struthio would generate billions in revenue. Dr. Lyle Oberg, former Alberta finance minister, is on the Struthio board, but...
So, unfortunately, I didn't agree with the business plan.
Angela Rasmussen, a virologist at the University of Saskatchewan, looked at the Struthio business plan.
I think calling it scientific work is quite generous.
What would you call it?
I call it a scam.
If this standoff was indeed based on a scam, it was an expensive one. All told, the cull cost Canadian taxpayers almost $7 million. Mark Kelly, CBC News, Edgewood, BC.
The Fifth Estate's investigation, The Ostrich Con, airs tonight at 9 p.m. on CBC Television and GEM, or watch it anytime on YouTube. Tens of thousands of people may soon be told to leave Canada. Immigration Canada says their applications for refugee status could be denied. It comes after Ottawa has passed a new law that drastically cuts the number of asylum seekers being allowed into this country. Rafi Boudjikanian has the story.
Every single day, like receiving 200, 300, 400, please help.
Lita Berengian says she does not expect those calls to stop anytime soon. The immigration lawyer says some of her clients have started receiving letters warning them they may be ineligible for refugee status. The immigration department says it expects to send some 30,000 letters out after Parliament passed legislation last month. The new rules largely limit applicants to refugee claims no later than a year after getting to Canada. In a letter seen by CBC News, applicants are told they have 3 weeks to send additional information before a determination is made. The IRCC says ineligibility does not mean someone is immediately removed. They can fill out forms about their risk of deportation, but no longer would have access to in-person hearings. For Berengian, that's a huge difference.
There is no member to listen to you.
In a second kind of letter seen by CBC, applicants who cross the Canada-US land border without going through a regular port of entry are told they must leave Canada immediately and may be able to apply for a form risk assessment at a later date.
It's misleading.
Adam Sadinsky is the vice president of the Canadian Association of Refugee Lawyers.
They do have the constitutional right to an assessment of their risk before they have to leave the country.
Sadinsky says he would not be surprised if the new legislation is challenged in court shortly. The government maintains it is trying to regain control of immigration to restore balance. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
A 20-year-old man is dead after a shooting at a college campus bar in Sarnia, Ontario. Police say 2 others are being treated for non-life-threatening injuries. The shooting happened around 1 a.m. Eastern Time. No one is yet in custody. The Yukon government is apologizing to former students of an elementary school in Whitehorse. It's part of a negotiated settlement after families of some children who attended Jack Holland Elementary School filed a class action lawsuit. They claimed the children were forcibly restrained or placed in seclusion, a practice that went on for years. Kelly McTavish reports.
In the Yukon's Legislative Assembly, Education Minister Scott Kent delivered the government's remarks.
The government of Yukon, and specifically the Department of Education, accepts full responsibility and offers a sincere apology to the affected children and their families.
In the gallery, family members wept quietly until suddenly the silence was broken by Suzanne Lalonde, a former school counselor.
The settlement will not bring satisfaction to many of those students.
She worked there for 15 years and says she was disturbed by what she witnessed.
Isolated for hours and restrained for hours on end. Sorry. Breaks my heart still.
Lindsay Amato is a parent and one of the lead representatives of the lawsuit. She says for her, the apology fell flat.
Because the people who were involved in harming our children weren't the ones issuing the apology.
Last year, Yukon's Child and Youth Advocate released a report saying vulnerable children were subject to harmful practices at the school due to failures in the system. An RCMP investigation that began in 2021 concluded 3 years later with no criminal charges. Parent Mark Rutledge says he's proud of his children for speaking up.
Part of that class action lawsuit, because my kids had said, I don't want this to happen to future generations. That's the sole reason of doing this, so the history does not repeat itself.
The lawyer for the victims says he expects the settlement process will take another 2 to 3 years. Callie McTavish, CBC News, Whitehorse.
I feel like we've discovered the last thing we need to discover on this spacecraft. This is such a fulfilling feeling.
I guess we'll let you come home now.
That is Jeremy Hansen, the Canadian astronaut, speaking from Orion with Mission Control before he and his crew make their way back home. Today, the last day of the Artemis II mission, the spacecraft already has done its second course correction burn, bringing it closer to its trajectory of entry. They are expected to land tonight in the Pacific Ocean, and as they come in, their families will be gathered in Mission Control in Houston. NASA and the U.S. military will assist in the Pacific Ocean splashdown. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca, including the top story this hour, a lot more on the Artemis II splashdown. 2,700 degrees on re-entry. Here's a headline for you. The astronauts will be riding a fireball through the atmosphere. It's all there for you at cbc.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
That's so cool. Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Corey Funk, sitting in today for Marcy Marcusa. It's getting warmer. I think it's officially spring. It's 1 right now in Winnipeg at the Forks. We are warming up today to a high of 6 degrees and sunny, and only gets warmer on the weekend. High tomorrow of 9. Coming up this hour on the show, Northern Manitoba First Nation has declared a state of emergency due to a series of deaths in the community, and it's something Sioux Valley Dakota Nation has also faced. We're going to hear what they experienced and what the road to recovery looked like. Also, we're going to hear from a Winnipeg economist this hour who says a potential gas tax might not make a difference for Manitoba's wallets, and that's potentially getting rid of the gas tax again. It might not make a difference, is what he says. Also, this hour on the show, CBC's Now or Never has been around for 10 years. We're going to talk to the hosts and tell you how you can win a pair of tickets to their birthday party bash at the Gas Station Art Center. That's coming up at 7:40, so stay tuned for that. Right now, though, 7:11, let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, starting this weekend, up to 100 skilled volunteers arrive in Peguis First Nation to help sandbag. That Interlake community may be facing its worst flood ever. The humanitarian aid group Team Rubicon has been called in to help. It is a veteran-led group made up of trained first responders and civilians. The head of Canadian operations says they're aware they may only have 10 days before Peguis starts flooding. And astronaut Jeremy Hansen has made history as the first Canadian to fly around the moon during the Artemis II mission. But the Royal Canadian Air Force colonel took some of his earliest flights right here in Manitoba. We'll hear all about it in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
Yeah, big day for the Artemis II. They're going to be splashing down tonight. And actually, there is a special on Newsnet going on this evening, hosted by Chris Hadfield and Roberta Bondar. So a big star-studded cast.
They're making a big splash.
I like that.
And it's what, around 6 o'clock our time?
Yes, I think it's around 6 o'clock this evening that they'll be splashing down. So that'll be exciting to watch. Thank you you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells at the CBC News Desk. Let's check in now with Abby Adeyemi with a look at your weather.
Sure, they're smashing down with some warmer temperatures greeting them as they return back to Earth for sure.
If they were coming to Manitoba, at least, I wish. I think they're in the Pacific. But yeah.
Well, we will be watching with some mild temperatures for sure in this part of the universe. It seems you're coming from out of space. Winnipeg, right now, we're looking at current temperatures around 1. Partly cloudy skies. We're expecting a mix of sun and clouds through the day. We warm up to 6 degrees later in the day with some mild winds. And tonight, you see more clear conditions as temperatures dip to about -4. And then tomorrow, some sunshine with even warmer temperatures. We'll get close to 10 degrees tomorrow. Southern regions are mainly sunny for the Westman region, where Brandon and Nipawin were sitting around -4 at this time. Clear conditions there. From Brandon all the way through to the Roblin area, we're seeing temperatures around -1, cloudy conditions, while the Interlake region sees partly cloudy skies at 0 in the Gimli area. Highs, yes, temperatures will recover well for the southern regions today, reaching around 7 degrees in Brandon and 8 in the Pembina Valley region. Particular period towards Dauphin Gimli, we'll see highs around 5 degrees. While up north, Thompson, Gillam, Lynn Lake, you're seeing light snow this time. Current temperatures hover between -12 and -20. Now, despite that snow, you should climb to highs near 0 today. While further north, Tudula Lake, frigid there, but sunny conditions. While Churchill sits at -26, Tudula at -29. Partly cloudy skies there for now. The wind chill biting around -36. So overall, quite a transition for southern Manitoba, Corey, after what we saw in the last 48 hours.
Yes, I feel like, I don't know about you, but I feel like I can just breathe a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Like early this week, it just felt so like, oh, the snow was kind of like keeping us captive. By winter.
My highlight is always seeing the sidewalks and the pavement, and you can. Yeah.
I've never been so excited to see cement.
Yeah, I know. I've never been this excited. Just seeing the pavement, all the sidewalks, and knowing nobody will slip.
I know. Everywhere I go, I just kick the snow a little bit. Like, for me personally, it just feels good to kick the snow, but I feel like I'm moving spring along a little bit faster.
Yeah, we're moving along, and we're warming up to 6 degrees today in the city, Corey.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
That's Abby Adeyemi. And Sierra Sanders, I know the commute hasn't been super busy, but you do have, because I wasn't totally right on when the splashdown's happening for the astronauts commute back to Earth today.
Yeah, so the astronauts on Artemis 2 are expected to splash down just off the California coast around 7 o'clock Central. So that's 8 o'clock Eastern and 5 o'clock Pacific time there for the folks in California. They're on the West Coast, I should say. So around just after 7 o'clock is when they're expected to touch down back to Earth.
So wild.
Oh, I've been fascinated. I've been so fascinated with the entire thing.
I know. It's really, I think it's fascinated a lot of people. More than I never thought of myself as a space person, but I think I'm kind of a space person.
And the photos that have come out of it have been amazing.
I know. Something else. Well, I wonder, I imagine we had Jeremy Hansen in the studio well before he was up there, but I'm sure he'll do some tour. So I'm excited to have him back, hopefully, and we can we'll talk to him all about it.
Exactly. So. Well, you might not be up in space, but we are back down here on Earth in Winnipeg.
Yes.
So if there's anything that pops up on your commute, whether you are here in the city or anywhere else on the province, I'd love to hear about it. Astronaut or not, the number to call is 204-788-3093.
Well, 7:16 right now, and next up here on Information Radio. Yesterday on the program, Premier Wab Kinew said his government is considering reducing Manitoba's gas tax this year.
We're going to watch the price of oil. I think everyone has seen what's happened because of the war in Iran, what has happened to the price at the pump. The unknown thing is, okay, if we have a ceasefire, and by the way, like everything Donald Trump does, this is the worst ceasefire in history already because who knows whether it's going to last the next few days. I really hope it does. But does the price of oil come down right away and then people get help at the pump? Or do prices stay high for a long time, in which case we may reduce the gas tax?
So Kinew says his government will make that call over the next month. The gas tax in Manitoba is currently 12.5 cents per liter, but one Winnipeg economist says a reduction in the gas tax might not make that much of a difference to people's wallets. Philip Surin is a professor at the University of Winnipeg, and he spoke to CBC's Ian Fraze about the pros and cons of lowering the gas tax yesterday, starting with how much money the average Manitoban might actually save.
Suppose it's a 10 cent per liter reduction.
then you just have to multiply those kilometers that you drive. If the tax cut lasts for the entire year, then it's 10 cents for every kilometer that you drive. So if you drive 20,000 kilometers, it's $200. In general, as I say, it's not a huge amount, but it's, sometimes it makes people feel a bit more confident going forward. But unless it was a huge reduction, it won't make a great deal of difference to their, their after-tax income.
What do you consider to be a huge reduction?
Well, it would have to be, 20 cents, 25 cents. It would have to, because right now gas, I think the last price I saw was at $1.70 a liter. And so going from $1.70 to $1.60 is not a huge difference, although it helps. And to be fair, gasoline is an input. Most people think about gasoline sometimes as a consumer solely, that you're driving around, but it's also an input into lots of industries. Anything that you need to transfer goods and services. Most of the delivery systems need gasoline, so it can have a trickle down effect in terms of helping those companies, not just consumers.
A lot of variables here. We don't know if this is going to happen. We don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know how many cents a liter off it could be. But is it worth it for the provincial treasury to give up however much money?
That's who's affected, is the provincial treasury. Now, the one thing you have to figure out is who uses gasoline more. In general, the evidence suggests that higher income individuals may have multiple vehicles. So they may drive more in total, so the total kilometers driven by the household might be higher. So, but in terms of, this is where you get a little bit technical, in terms of the benefit as a share of income, any tax cut for lower income individuals is going to mean a lot more, particularly if they drive quite a bit. And so in a sense, per unit taxes as you're going up are regressive, but when they're coming down, they are progressive in terms of the benefit in relation to your income, particularly if you're driving a lot. Now, the thing is, the lower income people, if they're not driving, they don't benefit at all from this. And that's the issue that, social welfare people are quite concerned about, is that it doesn't translate into benefits to people who don't use gasoline. But the only way they can indirectly get benefit is if the prices moderate a little bit for what they're buying.
To go back, you mentioned that the person who's impacted, or the thing that's impacted, is the provincial treasury.
Yes.
Can we handle this foregone revenue?
I think it is a significant bite from their budget. And if you think about how much wiggle room they don't have a lot. So they are giving up some revenues, but in a sense, it's not as if they're taking the money and putting it in the ground somewhere. They're actually giving it to people who actually are going to benefit. So it's really a transfer of spending from the public sector to the private sector. So the private sector individuals will now be able to spend. So it's not as if it's disappearing. It's going to make public spending more challenging. That's the issue that they'll face.
Well, that was University of Winnipeg economist Phil Serin. He was speaking to CBC's Ian Fraze. Well, 7:21 right now, and as mentioned earlier, today is the day. The crew of Artemis 2 is on its way home, set to land this evening in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California around 7 o'clock or so Winnipeg time. And while on their mission, the astronauts have been treated to a special playlist of wake-up songs. And here's one of those tunes. This is Chappelle Roan with Pink Pony Club on CBC Radio 1.
I know you wanted me to stay, but I can't ignore the crazy visions of me in LA. And I heard that there's a special place where boys and girls can all be queens every single day. I'm having wicked dreams of leaving Tennessee. If Santa Monica, I swear it's calling. gonna cause a scene. She sees her baby girl, I know she's gonna scream. God, what have you done? You're a pink pony girl, and you dance at the club. Oh, mama, I'm just having fun on the stage in my heels. It's where I belong, down at the Pink Pony Club. I'm gonna keep on dancing at the Pink Pony Club. I'm gonna keep on dancing down in West Hollywood. I'm gonna keep on dancing at the Pink Pony Club. Pink Pony Club. I'm up and dolls are on the floor. Lovers in the bathroom and a line outside the door. Black lights and a mirror disco ball. Every night's another reason why I left it all. I think my wicked dreams are here from Tennessee or Santa Monica. You've been too good to me. Won't make my mama proud. It's gonna cause a scene. She sees her baby girl, I know she's gonna scream. God, what have you done? You're a pink pony girl, and you dance at the club. Oh, mama, I'm just having fun on the stage in my heels. It's where I belong, down at the Pink Pony Club. I'm gonna keep on dancing at the Pink Pony Club. I'm gonna keep on dancing down in West Hollywood. I'm gonna keep on dancing at the Pink Pony Club. Pink Pony Club. Don't think I've left you all behind. Still love you in Tennessee, you're always on my mind. And mama, every Saturday I can hear your southern drawl 1,000 miles away, saying, God, what have you done? You're a pink pony girl, and you dance at the club. Oh, mama, I'm just having fun on the stage in my heels. It's where I belong, down at the Pink Pony Club.
Can you picture all the astronauts in Artemis 2 waking up, floating around, jamming out to this? I imagine they must all be singing along together, looking out at the moon. That's Pink Pony Club by Chapel Roan, one of the tunes on the special Artemis 2 playlist of wake-up songs. And so if you're waking up right now, you're welcome. And actually, apparently, Commander Reed Wiseman had that one added to the list. And some other songs, if you're wondering, on their playlist. One of them is a David Bowie song, but it's not Space Oddity. It's Under Pressure by David Bowie and Queen, as well as Lonesome Drifter by Charlie Crockett. So that's if you want to listen to those today and picture yourself as an astronaut floating around, waking up, you can do that. Well, let's get to morning sports here with Paul McGowan. Good morning.
Good morning, Corey.
Well, and speaking of waking up, seems like the Jets are starting to wake up a little bit. They won last night to keep their playoff hopes alive.
A 3-2 win over St. Louis, and the third win in a row for the Jets. They have been the best team in the conference over the last 10 games. Scott Arniel says it's a result of taking care of the little things.
You know that it's a 60-minute game, and nothing's defined by if you get down a goal or you get up a goal. There's still an awful lot of hockey to play, and guys are doing a good job of getting in shot lanes, taking hits to make the play, sacrificing when they have to, and that's all the stuff that makes it hard on the opposition, and it kind of also fires up our bench when guys are doing that stuff. And it's not just 5, 6, 7 guys. Everybody's doing it. They're just staying in games like we've been doing.
Staying in games and staying in the playoff race. But, the tough thing about getting behind the 8 ball in a season like this is that the teams the Jets are chasing also continue to win. And so the Jets, with 4 games to play, are 3 points back of the LA Kings. The Jets are home tomorrow taking on Philadelphia.
So let's go to basketball now. The Raptors inched closer to a playoff spot last night as well.
Yeah, sort of an odd week for the Raptors. 2 games against Miami, both of them at home, which I guess is still technically a home and home. The Raptors take full advantage of it, too. They beat Miami again last night. 38 points for Brandon Ingram, a season high for him. Darko Rajakovic, though, had an interesting take on Ingram's best night of the season.
we need BI to be aggressive. We need him to be forceful. He draws a lot of attention because of his size. I really like that he was not settling for anything, that he was really aggressive, taking it to the rim. He grabbed 7 rebounds, 7 assists. He led our team in assists, so it was a great performance. And now he's in trouble. Now we know what he can do, so we're going to expect more from him.
Yeah, congrats on the season high. That is your new standard, apparently. 2 games left now in the regular season for the Raptors. And with a win in just one of these games, they will clinch a playoff spot. They do play the Knicks tonight with a chance to clinch, although the Knicks have won the last 12 against the Raptors. So the better chance for them to clinch is on Sunday. They finish at home against the Brooklyn Nets.
So let's finish here on tennis. Canada is on the court today trying to qualify for the Billie Jean King Cup.
And with Victoria Mboko out of this qualification round, Canada's hopes rest with other top-ranked tennis players like Kayla Cross, for one, also with Bianca Andreescu. And I've talked recently about Bianca and her time off from tennis, a time that she spent making music, actually. And in case you thought the music career was simply a phase for Andreescu, she says that she wants to take her songs to the next level.
I've been writing some poems because I've been making music, like instrumental, but I mean, I'm not singing, but I've been speaking to one person and maybe that will come into fruition. It's been therapeutic, but in a different way. I've spoken to psychologists, I've meditated, and those are great tools to have, but I guess I'm adding another tool, like in my game.
Now, Corey, when Bianca mentioned that there was one person she was talking to about lyrics, my mind went, is it Drake? It could be, but it could also be the other Canadian tennis player with a music career, Denis Shapovalov.
Losing track of all the flights that I flew. What I do to get here, ain't nobody got a clue. So let me
That is Denis Shapovalov, who I found out this morning has a rap album.
Of course.
Bianca Andreescu, by the way, is on the court later this morning. Canada up against Kazakhstan today and tomorrow.
Do you think if they had if they had like a combo album and like Andreescu and Drake, it would be Andreescu?
Ooh, Andreescu.
I know. I think that sounds pretty cool.
There are some titles there.
We'll look forward to hearing that. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thanks, Corey.
That's Paul McGowan with your morning sports. Time now for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is 1 degree in downtown Winnipeg. We're keeping the climb going. Headed to 6 degrees this afternoon under a mix of sun and clouds, even warmer for the weekend. Well, starting this weekend, up to 100 skilled volunteers arrive in Peguis First Nation to help sandbag. The Interlake community may be facing its worst flood ever. The humanitarian aid group Team Rubicon has been called in to help. It's a veteran-led group made up of trained first responders and civilians. Tim Kenny heads up the Canadian operations. He says they're well aware the clock is ticking and protecting Peguis, as officials believe they may only have 10 days left before the flood.
That's why there has been a significant push to get our volunteers out onto the ground as quickly as possible so that we can, in the best amount of time, get as much sandbagging done as possible.
3 members of Team Rubicon will be in Peguis assessing the needs today. They'll likely stay in the local multiplex. Kenny says they expect to sandbag 60 buildings over 1 week. Well, Manitoba will be offering wildland firefighters N95 masks this summer, but their protection against wildfire smoke is limited. The gear captures most health-harming particles, but it can't stop gases like carbon monoxide. The Union for Provincial Firefighters is open to exploring better gear as long as it doesn't get in the way of firefighting. Kyle Ross is the MGEU's president.
Every time we put a little bit of a barrier, and then you have that barrier every day, it builds up and it wears them down, like where they could maybe be more effective or less tired because there's something that's slowing them down rather than helping them.
Natural Resources Minister Ian Bushy says the province wants to protect workers, but the Wildfire Service has also raised issues with wearing masks, like issues like heat exhaustion and difficulty breathing. A local economist says any potential gas tax break isn't likely to save most Manitobans much money. The Premier hints he is looking at the idea. University of Winnipeg economics professor Phil Serene says given the price of gas, it would have to be 20 to 25 cents a litre cut to really help people. He says it's all based on how much you drive.
It may help rural people a little bit more than city people. Surprisingly, it won't help people who have an EV at all. If you're worried about wealthier people getting this tax cut, if they're driving Teslas or other EVs, then they won't be getting a tax break.
Serene says one problem with cutting the gas tax is it will reduce government coffers. And he adds the province doesn't have much wiggle room for public spending. The opening of the new hospital in Portage-la Prairie has been delayed. The health centre was slated to start accepting patients this fall, but administrators wanted more time to prepare. Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera says health leaders approached the government with the request.
We're all very excited for what it means for the community and means for patients. We know that this has to be done in a way that prioritizes patient care, patient safety, and having the right resources and the amount of resources required.
Construction on the hospital is complete. Spring of 2027 is now the new opening date. Some school divisions have been granted more time to conduct reviews of their teachers' credentials. The province gave the order after a Steinbach Regional Secondary School teacher faced child exploitation charges last year. He was found to be working without a limited teaching permit. Cameron Hausman is the U of Manitoba's Educational Administration Department. He's in that department and says checks should happen every year.
When parents drop their kids off at school, they're placing a tremendous amount of trust, not just in individual teachers, but in the system as a whole. And we know that situations like this can really impact that public confidence in a negative way.
Hanover School Division tells CBC News its review is complete and all its teachers comply. Well, astronauts on the Artemis II lunar mission are heading home after traveling further into space than any humans had gone before. During the 10-day mission, Jeremy Hansen became the first Canadian to fly around the moon. A colonel with the Royal Canadian Air Force, Hansen got his basic flight training at Southport, just south of Portage-la Prairie. Harrison Roos at Sky Align, the company that's taken over training at Southport, says it shows the sky isn't the limit for grads.
It's just a wonderful reminder that, these people do these wonderful things day to day, and then some of them go on to do truly extraordinary things like flying around the moon.
The Artemis Crew 2 is expected to land back on Earth, splashing down near San Diego later today. You can hear the latest on the planned splashdown coming up on World Report at 8. Well, the Winnipeg Jets came up with a win, and that is thanks to Josh Morrissey, who not only scored, but skated into the goalie crease to make a big save.
Josh Morrissey says, "Get that out of here." That's a beautiful save from Morrissey. Keeps this game tied. I mean, Hellebuck out to challenge.
That is the call in the first period there on TSN as the Jets beat the Blues 3-2 last night in St. Louis, and Morrissey, in fact, was named the first star of the game. Winnipeg's other goals came from Alex Iafallo and Jonathan Taves. Winnipeg now with 4 games left in the regular season, and next up is tomorrow with the Flyers right here at Canada Life Centre. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells at the CBC News Desk. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Corey Funk. In for Marcy Marcusa, and Abby Adiemi is in with a look at the weather. Hello.
Hello, Corey. We're starting Friday with southern sunshine and some flurries in the northern part of the province. Forecast for Winnipeg and nearby areas and the Red River Valley region brings cloudy starts. We'll see a transition to a mix of sun and clouds. Currently in Winnipeg, we're tracking 1 degree at the Forks and some areas around the airport tracking -1 and 0, but we're out of that range of the minuses for the city because tomorrow we get to 9. Today we get to a high of 6 degrees. For Morden, Winkler, Altona, all the way around Headingley towards Portage-la Prairie, we're tracking -1 at that part of the province. Partly cloudy at this time. You warm up to 8 degrees later in the day. Now from Brandon all the way towards Nipoa, we're looking at a -4. Some sunshine there. It's going to be a mainly sunny day in the Westman region. You warm up to 7 degrees later later. Then for Dauphin, tracking it towards Russell and Roblin, we're seeing -1 there. You'll get to 5 degrees later. In the Interlake region, Gimli, good morning. You are currently at 0. Partly cloudy there, some sunshine on its way. You get to a high of 5 degrees. While for the Power, Flin Flon, we're seeing light snow there, -2 at this time, warming up to 4 degrees. Around Thompson, Gillam, Lynn Lake, the region seeing a light snow currently. Temperatures hovers between -12 to -20. We will see 0 in that part of the province. While for Tudula Lake, -29, some sunshine there. You only get to -8 today with a biting wind chill of -32 this morning. While for Churchill and the York region, we're looking at -26, partly cloudy skies. Warming up to -14, but not lots of heat you get because of the wind chill. Feels like -36 in the Churchill and Tudula Lake region this morning. So we're still seeing more like the cold temperatures up north, but down south we're already seeing those spring-like temperatures and mild conditions. And of course, we're going to transition from this cloudy skies we're seeing outside to a mix of sun and clouds. Expect a high of 6 and 8 degrees down south today, Corey. Woohoo! So let's take it. If you want to go for that walk, now's the time.
Yes, I'm knocking on wood. I'm saying spring is here, but just watch. Now that I said that, we're gonna all of a sudden it's gonna dip below 0 again.
I see an Alberta Clipper somewhere in the future?
No, shh. That's a swear word now, Alberta Clipper. You're not allowed to say that on air. We just that's a new policy from up high now, actually. Thank you very much, Abby. That's Abby Adeyemi at this, keeping an eye on the fairly lovely forecast, at least here in southern Manitoba, and fairly lovely commute overall, Sierra.
Yeah, I would say so. And I also wanted to add to the word list, probably the Colorado low as well. I feel like that might be up there too. Maybe not as much as the Alberta Clipper, but the Colorado low I think should be in that conversation
in the banned words
exactly
on air, at least until next winter.
Exactly. But yes, it's looking like a pretty sweet commute out there so far. The commuter line has been pretty quiet, which to me it kind of sounds like things are moving smoothly. I know outside our studio window here at the corner of Portage and Spence, it's been moving pretty smoothly as well. So things are looking good out there. But if they're not and something is getting in your way, I'd love to know about it. Whether you are here in the city or out on the highways, give me a call. The number is 204-788-3093.
Well, thank you very much, Sierra. Well, next year on Information Radio, CBC's Now or Never is celebrating 10 years of leaping into action with everyday people, taking a risk and trying to make a change. It's a national show here on CBC Radio 1. And I want to read you something that came in from an Ottawa listener, Jenny Chung, that sums up the show really, really nicely. It says, quote, "When the sun refuses to come out and my tank is nearly empty, I turn to Now or Never to jolt me back to some semblance of a human. It's especially vital when I'm a parent. My daughter is 8 years old, and when we're in the car together, this is the only show we agree on. What a gift it is to introduce some tough issues to a young person through a show that approaches all topics with grace, humility, and beautiful humor." So to celebrate 10 years on air, Now or Never is throwing a party in the form of a live show right here in Winnipeg on April 21st at the Gas Station Arts Centre. And hosts Ify Chuetalu and Trevor Deneen popped by the studio yesterday to tell me all about it. Here's our conversation. 10 years this show's been around. Did you think you'd make it this long?
I will say that in year one, I don't even think we really knew what we were doing at the time. And so when it first all started, I remember I think Ify and I were both just kind of like trying to like figure out what this show was, what we were doing, how to respond to each other. And like if you would have told me back then, 10 years later, we would still be doing it, I'd be like, that's unbelievable, and I'm going to get a lottery ticket as well.
What about you, Edie?
Oh, I knew all along. I said, we're going the distance. No, I really, previous to this, the longest I had ever worked anywhere was 3 years. I feel like in this current time, to anything lasting 10 years feels like such an achievement. So yeah, I don't know that I imagined it, especially when I flew to Winnipeg sight unseen and to a new city and a new job. It was all a surprise. And I think I was so focused on the day to day that 10 years felt imaginary. And yet here we are.
That's a Now or Never moment right there, I guess, back then, 10 years
100%.
ago. So when you look back to, baby Ify, baby Trevor, when you first started this baby show, how have you changed? How has the show kind of grown since then? How have you grown since then too, and the way you think about stories and you think about, with all those people that you've talked to over the years.
I think how we've grown, like you can't spend 10 years of sitting with people who are being incredibly vulnerable and honest and raw and sharing these moments in their life where they're just gathering up the littlest bit of courage to do something. Like, as you mentioned, like 10 years, I think about like sitting in the parking lot with a high school student in Winnipeg, like just debriefing their very first job interview, or being in moments like being on the phone with like a 90-year-old who's put an ad in the paper wanting to go on dates, and being on the phone as she's like having these people call. Like, you can't sit through moments like that and not have it injected in you a little bit, both like, what does it mean to live courageously? What does it take to change? And have that just be a part of you. But also, like, I think how the show has grown is, I think we hold those experiences and that responsibility and that honor that people share these stories and experiences with us, like, so much tighter. It feels just as special, maybe even more special 10 years down the line than it did in the beginning. And so I feel like, I don't know, everything feels like that much more special, impactful. And I have 10 years of people's experiences, people's trust in me. And I think it's made me braver. It's made me more open. And also, if I'm that person who, anytime someone shares something with me, I'm like, you know what? I talked to someone once who did this thing, because there's so many experiences that I just know of and have sat like side by side with someone to share.
I think it also, for me, I think it's everything he says is true, but I also think it's made me, like, when the world is kind of like, feels like it's like on fire a bit, it's a nice reminder to me all the time, like how many people are out there, like just everyday people that are just going through life, trying their best, trying to get something done for themselves, for someone in their community. And I'm just reminded all the time of like these, like, how good people can be. And I think I see it, and I think I'm brought back to that every single time. Maybe I'm struggling. There's a way to relate to people a little bit better, and I find that I relate to people a lot more now because I've been opened up to like so many people's lives, like who let us into their lives, which is a crazy thing to do. Just let someone into like the most personal moment you're going through.
It really is something. I mean, I did a 3-month stint on Now or Never, and the things that I did personally, and the stories that people opened up to me about was wild. Like a woman who, after living for I think over 60 years with a burn, never going to a public pool. I just asked her straight up, like, would you be interested in putting on a bathing suit and going to a public pool for the first time for this show? And she said, yeah. I would, if it means, making other burn survivors feel comfortable and hearing and be inspired from my story. And I was like, what? And she did for the show. And I mean, do you have any highlights of, from the past, that really stuck out to you, any stories?
It's funny because you just brought up how you were a part of the show for a while.
Yes.
I don't know if your listeners know this or not, but you, Corey Funk, you got naked for our show.
I did get naked for the show.
Like naked.
Yeah, full on naked. I went to Baconia,
yes,
the nude beach. Yeah. I just got right in there. It was really something. The amount of HR documentation I had to fill out for that, absolutely wild.
It was wild to see you do that. But we've had and that's the thing. I think when you look back, like the guests we've had, like it's amazing which ones pop into your brain when you ask that question, because we've had so many. But I remember like years ago, Sandra Schmidtke is a Winnipegger here. And what I loved about her was she just moved into a new neighborhood, and she'd been there for like a year and a bit, and she'd never made any friends just yet. And we kept, like, she messaged us being like, I have no friends, and like I don't know anyone in my neighborhood. And so we did, it seems simple, but it's huge. We went door to door in her neighborhood, knocking on doors with she made cookies just to introduce herself to people. And it was like out of her comfort zone. And then she ended up becoming like great friends with all these people in her neighborhood. It was just this lovely moment that's like an everyday experience that we don't really push ourselves to do sometimes.
And now you have the show coming up April 21st, live, part of the Winnipeg Comedy Festival, actually. So can you give us like a little hint of what you got in store?
I think, well, first of all, it's going to be a great show for me to be back in Winnipeg. I left Winnipeg a few years ago, so to come back and do a live show feels super special, especially in a city where so many of our stories have come from. And so part of the show will include a celebration of that, a celebration of the people, the Winnipeggers who've been a part of the show over the 10 years. Hopefully, I want to keep some of that a surprise, because that is a little bit of the theme of the episode, is surprise. Yeah. But we're gonna find some ways to involve people who've been part of the show, but also have some news stories that have people doing big, brave things on stage.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of people bawling and collapsing on April 21st for the show. Thanks for joining us, you guys.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks, Corey.
That's Now or Never hosts Ify Chuetalu and Trevor Deneen. Their live show is on April 21st here in Winnipeg. And if you want to win a pair of tickets, you can email or call us. And we want you to do something. You got to share a story, because it is Now or Never, about a time you were surprised. So it can be a small surprise, a big surprise. So you can email us to tell us about it, because that is the theme of the show. Here's the listener line. So I'm going to say it twice for you here. 204-788-3205. That's 204-788-3205. Call us. Tell us a story about a time you were surprised. You can also email us, win@cbc.ca. That's win@cbc.ca. And with the subject line Now or Never. You've got until, we're making this a fast and furious competition. You've got until the end of the show today to enter. So that's until 8:37 today to enter.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. It's news you can trust, delivered when you want and where you want on Canada's news app. Now with CBC Radio 1, local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
Well, next up here on Information Radio, the First Lady of the United States says she's a victim of lies and false accusations. Melania Trump made that remark while speaking from a podium at inside the White House yesterday afternoon. She says for too long she's been falsely linked with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It's not clear why she's speaking out now. And here's part of what she had to say.
I am not Epstein's victim. Epstein did not introduce me to Donald Trump. I met my husband by chance at a New York City party in 1998. This initial encounter with my husband is documented in detail in my book, Melania. The first time I crossed paths with Epstein was in the year 2000 at an event Donald and I attended together. At the time, I had never met Epstein and had no knowledge of his criminal undertakings. Numerous fake images and statements about Epstein and me have been circulating on social media for years now. Be cautious about what you believe. These images and stories are completely false. I'm not a witness or a named witness in connection with any of Epstein's crimes. My name has never appeared in court documents, depositions, victim statements, or FBI interviews surrounding the Epstein matter. I have never had any knowledge of Epstein abuse of his victims. I was never involved in any capacity. I was not a participant, was never on Epstein's plane, and never visited his private island.
Melania Trump also called on Congress to hold a public hearing centered on survivors of Epstein's crimes with a chance to testify before lawmakers. The First Lady spoke for about 5 minutes, reading her statement in the Grand Foyer, then walked away without taking questions. Well, it is 7:51 right now, and here in Winnipeg, we are sitting at 1, heading for a high today of 6 degrees here in Winnipeg at the Forks, dipping down to -4 overnight, but then tomorrow, high of 9 degrees and mainly sunny. Well, next up here on Information Radio, a warning: this story includes references to suicide. A Northern Manitoba First Nation says it's facing a mental health crisis in the past month. Nisichawayasik Cree Nation has seen 4 deaths, including 3 in the past 2 weeks. Angela Levasseur is the chief.
Our community is going through a very serious and devastating mental health crisis. And we've unfortunately had multiple suicides in a short period of time, as well as suicide attempts and suicidal ideation.
That was Angela Levasseur, the chief of Nisichawayasik Cree Nation. In 2020, Sioux Valley Dakota Nation, a community 240 kilometers west of Winnipeg, declared a state of emergency after the chief there said 4 people died by suicide. At that time, they sent a letter to Indigenous Services Canada asking for immediate assistance and money for more mental health services and resources. But what happens after a state of emergency is declared? How does a community recover? Jennifer Bone is the chief of Sioux Valley Dakota Nation and was the chief during the 2020 state of emergency. Good morning, Chief Bone.
Good morning.
So what do you remember, about that state of emergency that you declared back in 2020?
Just recalling, thinking back to that time, it was something that was very real, very heavy, very personal that happened in our community. Our community was in a deep state of grief, and we just felt that we needed additional support and resources for our community, not just, responsive support, I guess, like crisis support, but long-term mental health supports for all ages within our community.
And for you, what were the factors that you consider when declaring a mental health state of emergency in your community?
Well, we declared that state of emergency in October of 2020, and we haven't, I guess, in our the past 6 years, haven't ever rescinded that resolution to declare that support, but that followed a series of tragic losses within our community, including a cluster of suicides. And at that time, it was about recognizing that we did not have the resources in place to respond for what our people were going through, and that we needed immediate support. So we called upon the federal government to assist us with that.
So you said you haven't officially rescinded that yet. So that technically your community is still under a mental health state of emergency, technically?
Yes.
So since that was originally declared, has there been any changes in the last 4 years? 5 or 6 years, I guess.
I think we've built relationships. We relied at that time. We relied a lot on the MKO crisis unit. We built relationships with them, and then following that, it was SCO crisis unit. But declaring a state of emergency is, in many ways, like a call for help, but it's also an act of leadership. It's about saying that clearly that our people matter and that our lives matter and that we need assistance and that we can't face these challenges alone.
And what kind of assistance have you seen in the past 6 years? And has it made a difference at all?
I think we've received, some additional funding in regards to wellness, mental health, addictions, additional supports. But I don't think that's enough. There's, resources can get spread pretty thin and based on the size of our community or other communities within First Nations. Typically, they allocate maybe one full-time person, and we know that's not enough to address the ongoing issues within our community.
And over the 6 years, I don't know. Obviously, it's difficult to measure success in some ways when it comes to mental health in a community. But I mean, originally this stemmed out of 4 suicides in your community. Has there been any since?
There has, yeah.
Okay, and what supports do you think you still need to stop that from happening again?
Well, at that time, we identified urgent needs like more mental health workers, crisis support, and long-term solutions. like a healing lodge to support ongoing wellness in our community. And we see that happening today. Like we do have a commitment from the provincial government for a healing lodge. We're still continuing to advocate to the federal government for the funding for the actual operation of the healing lodge, but so the province is committed for the actual building, like the capital part of it.
And looking ahead here, what would it look like for you to have to rescind that state of emergency? What would it look? What would recovery, I guess, look like for your community?
I guess a long-term commitment, investment in our mental wellness, culturally grounded care, community-led solutions. It's not, the way I look at it, it's not all about providing these resources. Like there's so much more that our people face, and, there's a real lack of support for our young people, for infrastructure, for like recreation, sports, all of those things that help our children thrive. Having them in a good learning environment. I know we're actively pursuing a new school and being able to have access to a gymnasium, all of those positive things that, help our children in that way as well.
Well, Chief Bone, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and all the best.
Thank you, and I just want to give my encouragement to Chief Angela Lavisser and the difficult time she's facing in her community, and my thoughts and prayers are with her at this time.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Jennifer Bone is the chief of Sioux Valley Dakota Nation, a community 240 miles west of Winnipeg. And if you or someone you know needs help, you can contact Canada's Suicide Crisis Helpline by calling or texting 988. Quick headlines with Heather Wells.
Well, starting this weekend, up to 100 skilled volunteers arrive in Peguis First Nation to help with sandbagging. That community may be facing its worst flood ever. More at 8:30.
We'll be back after World Report.
Four-volume, 50-song album featuring over 24 musicians, but his latest record is just him and a guitar. He'll tell you why.
I see the whole world in your eyes.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
We're in Alberta today speaking with the province's premier, Danielle Smith, about everything from separatism to pipelines to relations with Ottawa. They seem friendlier than in past. Danielle Smith and more coming up on The Current from Calgary.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Pakistan's capital is ready to host peace talks between American and Iranian delegations this weekend, but whether those talks go ahead at all remains unclear. There's still no confirmation an Iranian delegation has even arrived in Islamabad, and that is largely because of what's going on in Lebanon. Israel is continuing its airstrikes there. Iran is insisting its 2-week ceasefire deal with the U.S. includes a halt to Israeli strikes in Lebanon, while the U.S. is telling Iran it had promised to fully open the Strait of Hormuz. So far, that hasn't happened. Megan Williams has more.
The Strait of Hormuz was supposed to reopen as part of the U.S.-Iran ceasefire deal. 3 days in, it's effectively still choked, with Iran warning ships attempting to pass without its explicit permission will be targeted and destroyed. Reports suggest Iran plans on charging a toll of up to $2 million per ship, which it says, going forward, it will share with Oman across the strait.
And obviously the Gulf states are looking with trepidation at that. They don't want Iran to become the Gulf hegemon that imposes its will over them, and they need to kind of fall in line for that.
Middle East Council of Global Affairs fellow Omar Rahman told Al Jazeera. Before the conflict, 20% of the world's oil and gas moved through the strait, carried by more than 100 ships a day. Yesterday, 7 tankers passed through. Now, some 230 loaded vessels are waiting to sail. Iran's position is that full security for shipping comes only after a U.S. military withdrawal. But Donald Trump posted overnight the U.S. military is, quote, loading up and resting, looking forward to its next conquest. A warning dressed as a victory lap. The White House says the strait must open without limitation, no conditions, no tolls. It's a position echoed by the head of Abu Dhabi's national oil company and the UN's Maritime Agency. It says 20,000 seafarers remain stranded on vessels in the Gulf, some for more than a month. Megan Williams, CBC News, Dubai.
The war in Iran is helping push inflation in the U.S. to its highest level in nearly 2 years. The annual rate jumped to 3.3% in March. That's up from 2.4% in February. March's number matches the inflation level from May 2024. The jump is in line with what many economists had predicted, much of the rise owing to the largest monthly jump in gas prices in 6 decades. Meanwhile, in this country, job numbers for the month of March are just out. Statistics Canada says the country added 14,000 jobs last month. That reverses a 2-month trend of job losses. And of note, hourly wages increased by 4.7% on a year-over-year basis. Nisha Patel has the details.
Canada's job market is stalling, adding just 14,000 jobs in March, with the unemployment rate holding at 6.7%. The natural resources sector added workers while positions were cut in finance, insurance, and real estate. Young people are struggling more than other workers. The unemployment rate for youth is nearly 14%. One silver lining, average hourly wages rose 4.7% year over year. That's the fastest pace in 18 months. Still, it's tough out there for job seekers. There's been little recovery since the economy shed more than 100,000 jobs in the first 2 months of the year. The trade war continues to slow exports and squash business plans for growth. The highest unemployment is in Ontario, where auto manufacturing and steel production are concentrated. And as economic uncertainty remains elevated, experts expect a weaker labor market in the months ahead. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
A 20-year-old man is dead after a shooting at a college campus bar in Sarnia, Ontario. Police say 2 others are being treated for non-life-threatening injuries. The shooting happened around 1 a.m. local time. No one is in custody. A 12-year-old girl seriously injured in Tumbler Ridge, BC's mass shooting is heading to the United States for treatment. Maya Jabella's mother says the girl is out of intensive care and appears to be stable, but she'll be going to a private hospital in Los Angeles for what's being called, quote, aggressive approach to rehab. Jabella has been receiving treatment at BC Children's Hospital in Vancouver after suffering a gunshot wound in February's attack that left 9 people dead. The cost of the U.S. treatment is being covered by donors. It was the most controversial and expensive animal cull in Canadian history. More than 300 ostriches were euthanized at a BC farm after an outbreak of avian influenza. The owners insisted the ostrich needed to be saved and studied for their antibodies. But an investigation by the Fifth Estate reveals their campaign was built on exaggerated and false claims about the birds, business, and scientific research. Mark Kelly reports.
Please, they're healthy! Please, they're healthy!
314 ostriches were euthanized on a BC farm last November, a cull that was delayed for 10 months as the farm owners filed legal challenges. The farm argued online and in court their ostriches were scientifically valuable because they'd developed herd immunity. Katie Pizitny said a Quebec lab had tested their ostrich antibodies, and the then president of the company was impressed by their potential.
Even at one point he said, if all of your ostrich eggs are like these eggs, he said this is a game changer.
In an email to the Fifth Estate, that lab, Immune Biosolutions, said the farm's ostrich antibodies weren't usable for therapeutic development. The farm owners also claimed a Harvard University Medical School professor was on the scientific advisory board of their ostrich antibody research company, Struthio Bioscience. When we contacted Dr. Alessio Fasano, he said he'd never heard of it. The company's pitch to investors claimed Struthio would generate billions in revenue. Dr. Lyle Oberg, former Alberta finance minister, is on the Struthio board, but...
So, unfortunately, I didn't agree with the business plan.
Angela Rasmussen, a virologist at the University of Saskatchewan, looked at the Struthio business plan.
I think calling it scientific work is quite generous.
What would you call it?
I call it a scam.
If this standoff was indeed based on a scam, it was an expensive one. All told, the cull cost Canadian taxpayers almost $7 million. Mark Kelly, CBC News, Edgewood, BC.
The Fifth Estate's investigation, The Ostrich Con, airs tonight at 9 p.m. on CBC Television and GEM, or watch it anytime on YouTube. To the moon and back. Astronauts on the Artemis 2 mission are coming back today. The splashdown expected to happen tonight around 8 o'clock Eastern. And as their spacecraft enters the Earth's atmosphere 30 times faster than the speed of sound, mission controllers will be holding their breath. Anand Ram reports.
I'm going to tell you, it's 13 minutes of things that have to go right.
Jeff Radigan, lead flight director for Artemis 2, talking about the highly anticipated return to Earth.
Main chutes have to deploy, the reefing systems have to cut, we have to get touchdown angle alignment correct.
Starting around 7:30 p.m. Eastern tonight, the crew re-enters Earth's atmosphere, hoping for a smooth splashdown. Always risky, says York University Associate Professor John Moores.
There's a lot of speed that you've got to lose very quickly. Your aim has got to be true in order to get into the atmosphere.
This is the first time humans have returned from the moon in more than 50 years, but it's the second time for the Orion capsule.
Artemis 1 had a lot of unexpected charring, even dislodging of material from the heat shield that they weren't expecting.
Josh Dinner is a writer with Space.com. He says the Artemis 1 re-entry 3 years ago has led to changes.
Instead of altering the design of the heat shield, what they did instead was alter the trajectory of Orion's return for this mission.
Meanwhile, the astronauts are ready to come home, says NASA's Associate Administrator Amit Kshatriya.
They are some of the most thoughtful, incredible people that I've ever known, and that what they've shown to me is a great example of why we go and do these missions, right? If you can't take love to the stars, then what are we doing?
And as they carry the precious wealth of experience for future crews, keep in mind, they're bringing it back at more than 38,000 kilometers per hour. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
And finally, 50 years ago, today.
Woke up this morning with a wine glass in my hand. Who's fine? What fine? Where the hell did I die?
Peter Frampton went to #1 on the U.S. album chart with Frampton Comes Alive, one of the biggest-selling live albums in rock history. It was the best-selling album of 1976, selling over 6 million copies in the U.S. Frampton Comes Alive was voted Album of the Year in the 1976 Rolling Stone Readers' Poll. It stayed on the chart for 97 weeks. And despite some health challenges, the 75-year-old Frampton isn't slowing down, with a new all-star collaboration album to be released next month. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Well, you want to start taking bets on how many people will be wearing shorts out there today? Finally, weather's warming up. We're sitting at 1 right now at the Forks, heading to a high today of a sunny 6 degrees, which in Manitoba in April is in fact shorts weather, maybe even flip-flop weather. Coming up this half hour on the show, how much did you pay to fill up your gas tank this week? Well, the Premier of Manitoba is thinking of lowering that receipt. We're going to hear from an expert about what a gas tax cut would mean for Manitobans. That conversation coming up right here on Information Radio. Stay tuned. 8:11 right now. Let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, Peguis First Nation is getting help with flood prep from the humanitarian aid group Team Rubicon. Starting this weekend, up to 100 skilled volunteers arrive to sandbag. The head of Canadian operations at Team Rubicon says they may only have 10 days before Peguis starts flooding, and it may be the worst flooding Peguis has faced yet. The opening of a new hospital in Portage-la Prairie has been delayed. The health center was supposed to start accepting patients this fall, but administrators wanted more time to prepare. Spring of 2027 is now the new opening date. Portage PC MLA Jeff Barizo worries staff hired to work at the health center might quit instead of waiting to start work next year. We'll hear more in our next local news at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That's Heather Wells at the CBC News Desk. Abby Adiemi, what's going on with the weather?
Well, Corey, let's look at the northern part of the province instead. We still have cold conditions there with temperatures hovering between -2 and -29. Some flurries were spotted earlier around the Gillam-Lynn Lake area, but that's stopped for now. We have more of cloudy conditions. Current temperatures there, we're looking at -12 around Lynn Lake and -20 around Gillam, and Thompson around -14. For the Red River Valley region, Winnipeg currently at 1. We've been there all morning. We should see partly cloudy skies. We're anticipating a mix of sun and clouds later in the day, and that will take us into the evening period. We warm up to about 6 degrees. It's going to be really, really mild, and then we drop to about -4 later, but some sunshine on the way, and even warmer high of 9 degrees for Saturday. And that's what the condition will look like for most regions in the southern part of the province, warming up close to 8 degrees today.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Sierra, what's going on with the commute?
Nothing. If we're being blunt and honest,
Yeah.
it has been a very smooth commute so far. The commuter line has been pretty quiet, which to me sounds like that things are moving along smoothly out there. So far, not hearing about any backups or anything causing any issues out there. But we still have a little bit of time left in the show, so if there is something that's popped up on your commute, I would love to know about it, whether you are here in the city or anywhere else in the province. You can give me a call. The number is 204-788-3093.
We also have some time in the show for people to submit their chance to win some tickets to the live Now or Never taping happening later this month at the Gas Station Arts Center. That's happening April 21st. Now or Never, celebrating 10 years on air with a live show. It's part of the Winnipeg Comedy Festival, and you can win tickets. And all we're asking you to do is to submit to us by the end of the show a story about a time you were surprised. Here's an email we got from Sue Hemphill. She says, last time I was surprised was when my mom had died after her husband and I provided her end-of-life care at home. I was writing her obituary over several days, and I really needed a hug. I went to Grant Park Mall, hoping to catch my bestie, who was there for an appointment, but I just missed her. So staring in McNally, somewhat disoriented and very fatigued, I ran into a dear childhood friend who I hadn't seen in over a decade, who knew my mom, and I told her I told her my mom had just passed, and she gave me a long, healing hug. Exactly what I needed. What a delightful surprise. It can be that simple. It could be a small surprise, a big surprise, but maybe a small surprise that meant something big to you. You can give us a call to tell us about it, or email us. So here's a listener line if you want to call us to tell us about it. 204-788-3205. That's 204-788-3205. You can also email us with the subject line Now or Never to win@cbc.ca, just like Sue did. That's win@cbc.ca. You've got till the end of the show today, so 8:37, to send us an email or give us a call. Well, next up here on Information Radio, the Interlake region could be facing its worst flood in a very long time. Starting this weekend, up to 100 volunteers will descend on Peguis First Nation. They're from a humanitarian aid group called Team Rubicon. It's a veteran group led group, which includes trained first responders and civilians, and they'll help with sandbagging. Tim Kenny heads the Canadian operations, and the CBC's Susan Magus spoke with him.
As with all things, you have to know the scenario on the ground, and we also want to make sure that as we move into an Indigenous community, we're not overtaxing the population. So we're sending a 3-person reconnaissance element that will head into the community. It looks like they're going to be on the move over tonight and into tomorrow. They should be arriving in the community tomorrow, at which time they will link up with the emergency management team in the community and then conduct a reconnaissance of what the homes, what the area looks like, as well as what logistics arrangements need to be made, and just in order to support our elements who will begin flowing in over the weekends.
Okay, so by the weekend you expect to have a real presence there?
That's correct.
What is your sense as to what you are likely to be able to commit to their sandbagging efforts at this time?
So we're looking at an element somewhere between 50 and 100 personnel. We are going to tailor it to the scenario. We are also tracking that there has been a wider request for assistance that has gone out from the province as well as the community. And so it'll be about achieving a balance in terms of making sure that we have a meaningful and a response that is in line with the community's request, but again, in a larger context of not putting undue pressure on the community at this difficult time.
Right. So what do you mean by a wider request? So the initial request was sandbagging, right? So what does the wider request involve?
Just in terms of our awareness of what has transpired in sort of open source media, it's our understanding that the province has made a request for Canadian Armed Forces assistance, and so we're just tracking that, and so we are cognizant of the fact that there might be more players on the ground other than the First Nations and us.
Did you know that they've had 25 centimeters of snow in the last day?
So we thought it was actually much more than that. So we are tracking that the weather conditions have been challenging in the area, that there were two weather systems, the one that just passed and an upcoming one, that were the major causes for concern, and that's why there has been a significant push to get our volunteers out onto the ground as quickly as possible, so that we can, in the best amount of time, get as much sandbagging done as possible.
They have flood experts working at Peguis, and one of the experts said today that he thinks they have about 10 days before the water comes, which is a really, really tight deadline. How will your agency be able to work under that kind of a deadline?
So what we have committed is to providing a week of assistance, and that's why we are mobilizing such a large team. And our goal, based on initial information out of the community, is to assist with the approximate 60 buildings and 60 pieces of infrastructure that will need protecting.
Do you have any volunteers or any expectation that some of the volunteers will be from Manitoba?
Yes. So we're looking at mobilizing as locally as possible. Right now, it seems to be somewhere in the order of 10 to 20 volunteers will be coming out of Manitoba, and we'll be looking to backfill from a mix of as close as possible to highly experienced volunteers as well, in order to have the right impact on the ground.
That was Tim Kenny speaking to CBC's Susan Magus. He heads the Canadian operations for Team Rubicon. 3 members of Team Rubicon will be in Peguis assessing the needs today. Well, next up here on Information Radio, how much do you pay for gas? Prices have been up and down over the last few weeks and is largely driven by the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. On Tuesday, a 2-week ceasefire was announced between the U.S. and Iran. But what does this mean for gas prices? The province eliminated its 14 cents per liter gas tax entirely back in 2024 to help people with rising inflation. And Premier Wabkanu says he's considering the idea of reducing the gas tax again. Premier Wabkanu spoke with CBC's Marcy Marcus on Information Radio yesterday.
This is a quote from you. You said, quote, "Here in Manitoba, we're focused on you. We cut the gas tax once. Maybe we'll do it again," end quote. You going to do it again?
Maybe. So we are looking at what's happening with the price of
I
oil.
tried.
No,
Manitoba.
but seriously, I would say over the next month, we're going to watch the price of oil. I think everyone has seen what's happened because of the war in Iran, what has happened to the price at the pump. The unknown thing is, okay, if we have a ceasefire, and by the way, like everything Donald Trump does, this is the worst ceasefire in history already, because who knows whether it's going to last the next few days. I really hope it does. But does the price of oil come down right away and then people get help at the pump? Or do prices stay high for a long time, in which case we may reduce the gas tax?
You have a timeline for when you're...
I would say over the next month,
Okay.
because we should see within the next month if this ceasefire actually leads to prices going closer to normal.
That was Premier Wab Kinew speaking to CBC's Marcy Marcusa on Information Radio yesterday about gas prices. So how do Winnipeggers feel about a possible gas tax cut? CBC's Sophia Peralta-Baron spoke with some people yesterday.
I'm Freya. And last name? Martin, Martin. Yeah, I think that would be lovely. Times are tough for a lot of people, obviously. I know this impacts people more than probably myself. So I think any little bit can help.
Tom Johnson. I hope he does. I don't think he can do it very long because he has to get down the deficit. But anything would help, even if it's a week or 2 weeks. It would be great.
I think it's a good idea if the province can afford it. That's the question.
Can the province afford it? Do you think the province can afford it?
I think they got a lot of expenses that they need to be dealing with.
My name is Ken Pittman. I'm from Newfoundland, but I live in Thompson. I think it's a great idea. Wob and I are kind of buddies too, so yeah, we've met a few times, and I'm a strong NDP supporter as well.
What's your reaction to high gas prices, and how is it impacting your life right now?
It's pretty hard. I'm on a low income and a senior citizen, and so going to the malls and things like that to do shopping, and it's expensive. And then of course the shopping stores are the prices are a lot more for food, so it's hard.
I don't drive a lot. I live in the village, so I only go through about a tank of gas a month, so it's actually not impacting me hugely, but the prices are crazy.
And what's your reaction when you see that receipt at the end, even though you only go to the pump once in a while?
Thanks, Donald.
I think it's just gouging us as they've always done for one reason or another. And this conflict should never have happened, I'm totally anti-war, and it should never have happened.
How has gas prices impacted your life?
Well, I travel Thompson and Winnipeg quite a bit, and it adds up, yeah. I filled up 3 times here in the city. Today it was almost $100 for my SUV. I'm glad I didn't bring my truck, so.
What is it usually for your SUV?
It's usually, when it's almost empty, probably 60, 65. Yeah.
What's your plan financially if this continues?
Well, there's not much we can do, if I want to travel, I've got to drive here or there to do different things, and I guess I got to suck it up.
That was CBC Sophia Peralta-Baron speaking to Winnipeggers about gas prices yesterday. Patrick Dahan is an analyst with Gas Buddy, a website that allows drivers to compare gas prices in Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's talk about this ceasefire. How do you think it'll impact gas prices?
Well, it's tough to know. As you mentioned in that segment, there's a lot of back and forth. We've seen Iran essentially maintain the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. We haven't really seen any oil flowing through it yet. We have seen a few bulk carriers a couple of days ago, shortly after the ceasefire. But Iran is still certainly controlling the strait, suggesting it's closed after Israel attacked Hezbollah. We have weekend talks coming up between the U.S. and Iran, and that could offer further clues. But for now, there's not really a whole lot that has changed as a result of the ceasefire. Oil prices had plummeted Wednesday on hope that it would reopen. They fell 15%, but they did claw some of those losses back yesterday. Oil rebounded about 5%, and that's leading to a very topsy-turvy environment at gas pumps across the country. Now, most provinces are seeing prices trickle lower today as a result of that big drop that happened Wednesday. How long those decreases could continue? Well, I'm hopeful that they may continue into the weekend, But what happens next week is certainly very unpredictable. And the weekend ceasefire talks between the U.S. and Iran are likely to dictate what comes next.
So if suddenly the Strait of Hormuz opens up, like it did before the war, how much could we see prices drop and how soon?
Well, it all depends on the degree of the reopening, whether there is confidence or not. And I think that's going to take some time to make a determination. If we see, a few ships start trickling through and by next week it's fully reopened, oil prices could likely plummet significantly, maybe 20 or 30% in a week. But anything has told us that this is not just a open or closed access point, and that it could be limited to a degree of ships, or Iran could attempt to collect tolls, which would inhibit the free movement. So it's not just as simple as being reopened or closed. It's really to the degree. And oil prices will respond in kind to however many ships get through. If it's only a small amount, oil prices still could climb on the fact that millions of barrels are still stranded. But if it is fully reopened, of course, that would be a best outcome. All of this, very difficult to predict, given the back and forth between the U.S. and Iran.
So as we heard there, Premier considering reducing the gas tax here in Manitoba. What difference do you think that could make for people?
Well, it certainly would reduce the pump price. My wallet would love something like a gas tax holiday. We've seen several states and a couple provinces toy with this idea. However, from the angle of an economist, it's a terrible idea because it further stimulates demand at a time that supply has been drastically reduced. So that imbalance could actually exacerbate a potential rise in the price of oil if this issue continues. That is, if the strait remains blocked, reducing gasoline taxes acts as a stimulant to demand at a time that supply is falling.
Well, we also kind of heard that demand's always going to be there in a way, too. That last person we heard there who drives to and from Thompson and Winnipeg, he said, even if prices stay high, I guess I just got to suck it up. Because a lot of people, they have to drive to work. They have to drive to wherever they want to go. Their lives are built around driving places, especially here in Winnipeg. So, when people who are thinking about, setting the prices at the pumps, they know demand is always kind of going to be there until, unless there's this big change and everyone goes to electric. But, what do you think people who set the prices are learning from these big jumps? And could we just see prices stay high because they know people are willing to pay for it?
Well, it's exactly it. This is a lesson in economics. The price is not determined by one body or one entity. It's controlled by a balance of supply and demand. And what the market is telling us is that balance has completely been thrown out the window by a sudden drastic drop of 20 million barrels of oil that can no longer be sold in the global market because it's being blocked in the Strait of Hormuz. And oil prices in economics tells us this, that oil will continue to rise until demand falls to line up closer with the realities of today's level of supply. And that means that gasoline prices, we've heard some apocalyptic numbers, $200 oil, $300. Nobody really knows because, what may stop one person from consuming fuel or making those trips may not stop another. And oil prices will rise to whatever point is needed for demand to decrease to the better reality of supply today. So it's a constant balance. And oil prices may continue to advance until they find where most motorists are starting to reduce consumption.
Well, Patrick, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Patrick DeHaan is an analyst with GasBuddy.com. Time now for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. It's 1 degree. We're going to keep climbing to 6 under a mix of sun and clouds today, and even warmer for the weekend. Peguis First Nation is getting help with flood preparation from the humanitarian aid group Team Rubicon. It's a veteran-led group which includes trained first responders and civilians. And starting this weekend, up to 100 skilled volunteers will arrive in Peguis to sandbag. Tim Kenny heads the Canadian operations. He says they're aware they may only have 10 days before Peguis starts flooding.
That's why we are mobilizing such a large team. And our goal, based on initial information out of the community, is to assist with the approximate 60 buildings, 60 pieces of infrastructure that will need protecting.
3 members of Team Rubicon will be in Peguis assessing the needs today, and they will likely stay at the local multiplex. The Interlake community could be facing its worst flood ever. Manitoba will be offering wildland firefighters N95 masks this summer, but their protection against wildfire smoke is limited. The gear captures most health-harming particles, but it can't stop gases like carbon monoxide. The Union for Provincial Firefighters is open to exploring better gear as long as it doesn't get in the way of firefighting. Kyle Ross is the MGEU's president.
Every time we put a little bit of a barrier, and then you have that barrier every day, it builds up and it wears them down, like where they could maybe be more effective or less tired because there's something that's slowing them down rather than helping them.
Natural Resources Minister Ian Bushy says the province wants to protect workers, but the Wildfire Service has also raised issues with wearing masks, issues like heat exhaustion and difficulty breathing. Well, Stats Canada has just released March jobs numbers this morning, and they show the rebound from losses in February. Stats Can says the labor market added 14,000 jobs across the country in March, keeping the national unemployment rate steady at 6.7%. Manitoba's jobless rate improved slightly to 5.6% from 5.7% the month before. The opening of the new hospital in Portage-la Prairie has been delayed. That health centre was slated to start accepting patients this fall, but administrators wanted more time to prepare. Health Minister Uzoma Eseguera says health leaders approached government with their request.
We're all very excited for what it means for the community and means for patients. We know that this has to be done in a way that prioritizes patient care, patient safety, and having the right resources and the amount of resources required.
Construction of the hospital is complete. Spring 2027 is the new opening date. Portage PC MLA Jeff Berizzo worries staff hired to work at that health centre might quit instead of waiting to start work next year. Some school divisions have been granted more time to conduct reviews of their teachers' credentials. The province gave the order after a Steinbach Regional Secondary School teacher faced child exploitation charges last year. He was found to have been working without a limited teaching permit. Cameron Hausman in the U of M Educational Administration Department says checks should happen every year.
When parents drop their kids off at school, they're placing a tremendous amount of trust, not just in individual teachers, but in the system as a whole. And we know that situations like this can really impact that public confidence in a negative way.
Hanover School Division tells CBC News its review is complete and all its teachers comply. A man was taken to hospital after getting dumped into a garbage truck in Portage-la Prairie. RCMP say it happened early yesterday morning. Police say the driver didn't know a man was trapped in the back of the truck until the man started yelling. The 31-year-old was taken to hospital with what are believed to be minor injuries. The Mounties say the garbage truck driver picked up a commercial bin and dumped its contents into the back of his truck, unaware there was a man inside. The man was rescued by the Portage-la Prairie Fire Department. Astronaut Jeremy Hansen has made history as the first Canadian to fly around the moon during the Artemis II lunar mission. But the Royal Canadian Air Force colonel took some of his earliest flights right here in Manitoba. Hansen got his basic flying training at Southport, just south of Portage-la Prairie. Harrison Roos runs the communications department for Sky Align, the company that's taken over training at Southport. Roos says Hansen's career trajectory will inspire future Air Force trainees to reach for the stars.
Watching somebody like Colonel Hansen go on his journey has to inspire future generations of aviators in the Air Force to think about what's possible, whether it's the moon, Mars, who knows what's in the future now.
The Artemis II crew is expected to land back on Earth later today. You can hear much more about it through the day right here on CBC Radio 1. And you can find more Manitoba news at cbcnews.ca.
And full coverage on CBC Newsnet this evening as Splashdown is expected around 7 p.m. or so. Chris Hadfield and Roberta Barndar, two famous Canadian astronauts, hosting. Thank you very much.
And you know what? The coverage on Newsnet, I think, actually begins around 2:30 this afternoon.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That's Heather Wells at the CBC News Desk. Final surprise story we got for this new Now or Never contest. You still have time to submit. In 1979, while working at a ski resort in BC, I received received a letter from my mom who was vacationing in Hawaii. To preface this, my mother was widowed as my dad passed away in 1975. While reading her letter, I was somewhat taken aback as she had indicated to me she just got married. I wasn't even aware she had a boyfriend. Quite shocked indeed. You can submit still. Win at cbc.ca, subject line Now or Never. You could win tickets to the live show of Now or Never later this April. Thanks to everyone who put together the show this week. Abby Adeyemi, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Akuma, May McKillop, Marshall Hodgins, Jenica Sewell, Dylan Longhurst, Sophia Peralta-Baron, Sarah Kremlowski, and our hosts Nadia Kidwai, Marjorie Dowhouse, Julie Buckingham, and Marcy Marcusa. Meekin Ketchison, Aaron Broman, and Heather Wells. Also, big help from them. Thanks to Travis Golby, Trevor Bryan, Darren Morash, Nelly Gonzalez, and Leif Larson. Also, big help to them. Warm weekend ahead. It is currently 1 degree, heading for a high of 6, +9 tomorrow. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. The Current is next. Have a lovely weekend.